Good evening. I think we're ready to start our school committee meeting. I'd like to call to order the school committee meeting for the Newburyport schools for Monday, November 20th, 2017. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Holliday. Good evening, everyone. This brings us to our session of public comment. If there is anyone in the audience that would care to address the board at this time, could you please step forward, state your name and your address, and try to keep your comments to about 2 minutes or less. Any public? Eric? Well, you have to kneel to talk with us tonight.
We're not going to get Can you guys hear me?
It's not us.
I don't know if
it's
home
cable.
can.
It's cable.
That's very humbling.
Want me to put it up here?
Why don't we put a chair?
It's a
So you could sit.
Okay.
Eric, why don't you bring a chair
Chair
up?
over, and then you could sit.
Is that okay?
Said they'll hear it.
They said they can hear it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's a fancy microphone.
Oh, okay. You should be all set.
It'll be fine. I feel like I'm part of the team now.
Remember, I said 2 minutes or less.
All right. So,
Just what your name?
Eric Keller, 50 Jefferson Street, Newburyport. So I've been coming to these meetings for a year and a half, mostly to stay up to date on the Start School Later initiative. I wanted to thank the committee for putting the process in place that we heard a month ago, when the school did a tremendous amount of work and research to explore the obstacles. I recognize it's a lot of work. It's clear that they uncovered some obstacles. I guess feeling I and many parents came away with was that we didn't hear any issues that are nearly as important as the issues we're trying to solve by changing school start times. As a reminder, we have some of the earliest start times in the country, and it's something we should really address. It seems like there's 3 issues that have emerged as the top 3 issues based on that research. First is sports. We've heard sports over the last 2 years. Some schools will accommodate this change if we make it. Some schools won't. The problem we see is that kids will have to get dismissed early. It's a problem. It doesn't seem like a huge problem. The second is childcare costs. The presentation a month ago showed the total cost of childcare per family. It didn't show the delta in costs. So I'd ask the committee, unless I missed it, that we truly look at the delta in costs, because I remember a $4,000 figure on that presentation, and that was the total cost. So I think it's important to look at the delta and look at what people are already paying. That is a real burden, and we recognize that. The third is that younger kids will be burned out at the end of the day. Mr. Mascio will probably kick me from behind, but that is an issue, but it just doesn't seem to be, again, nearly as important as the larger thing we're trying to solve here. So these are all 3 very, very valid issues. They just don't seem like they are insurmountable, and they don't seem like they're more important than the issues we're facing. We just need to come up with a plan. I think what I have witnessed in coming here for the last 2 years is we, as parents, want this committee to thrive and empower each other and empower the teams to be the best schools in the country. And what I feel like is it's just sort of status quo. Like there's no plan, there's no tactics. There should be a goal, best schools in the country, and then the 10 tactics that we are all going to use to become the best schools in the country. And I just see this sort of hodgepodge of issues, and this being one of them, that while we did put these committees together to research it, it just seemed like it could have been a little bit more disciplined based on just how important this issue is. A quick reminder of how real this issue is. The science behind this shows that starting school later decreases depression, obesity, and even teen suicide. The results are better grades, a rise in test scores, and attendance. I mean, it's that compelling. I don't think that kids who miss a class for sports or the second graders getting tired in school are going to suffer from depression, anxiety, and obesity, right? If we make this change, we are solving real problems for teenagers. I'll wrap it up with, I hope we don't wait another year. If we do, we're talking about September of 2019. I would encourage us to just make the change, and there are going to be people who resist this change, but it's for the greater good of these teenagers. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
Just a question with the later start times committee discussion. Will we have a chance to be part of that discussion then, or if I have something to say, do I have to say it?
I can't determine that yet. What we would like to do, as I spoke at the last meeting, is to have a school committee discussion, which we have not had yet because of open meeting law. And then I had said that after that discussion, the committee may decide to open up another session of public comment. But that's yet to be determined based on our conversation, so take the sure thing.
Eric Flum, 1 Glendale Court, Newburyport. Father of 2 in the system, an 8th grade girl and a 6th grade boy. Just a quick, I guess it's more of a question to the board. There's, everyone's been deeply involved in this for a year and a half, 2.5 years longer. A lot of evidence has been presented to the board. A lot of experts have been spoken to the board. I guess my question to you is, forget the difficulty around the busing or the athletics, the tire saying, does anybody not believe the science behind what's been presented as far as the benefits that are gained for the older children with later start school? So it's just, is the science believable or not believable to this committee?
We have not answered that question of ourselves. I will tell you that I believe it is. If anyone else cares to divulge their feelings, please go right ahead.
I do too.
I believe the science.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Okay. So that it's believed what the benefits could be. So
Absolutely.
It's trying to figure out what's
How
more
to.
important, the science of the learning or the academics,
Right.
the athletics,
That's right.
the other things versus the main point of schooling, which is to enrich and educate the children. Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Any further comment? Yes. Must be the chair.
Yeah. Hi. My name is Rachel Forrest Hay, 25A Johnson Street, Newburyport. Got 2 children in the system as well, 7th grade and 5th grade. And it's my first time coming to the committee, but I've been having lots of input into the Start School Later initiative online and reading a lot of the science behind it. I just want to say that I really wholeheartedly support the initiative. I think it'd be amazing for the kids to benefit from the science behind the reasons to have a later start time. And as an international person, who do start school a lot later, generally in the UK. So it was I can see the big difference from my experience as a student compared to my children's experience over here. One thing I love about the school district over here is the enthusiasm of the teachers. I think there's some fantastic modern teaching methods in Newburyport school systems, and I love having input into that as a parent. And I feel like a lot of that is evidence-based. A lot of the modern teaching methods would be having a look at what works well in other areas and how can we bring that to Newburyport. And I feel like this initiative has worked well in other parts of the country to start school later. Let's take that evidence of where it's worked well, bring it to Newburyport as well, and just see it as a sort of a modern way to improve the daily lives of our children's experience at school.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Hearing none, we'll move on with our agenda. Next up are the Newburyport School warrants. Do we have any warrants, Mr. Menon?
We do have warrants. We have three to move on tonight. The first one, I move that the following named bills of the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate of $527,661.13 be approved and forwarded to the city auditor for payment. There are no conflicts.
Second?
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
I move that the following named bills of the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate of $66,869.23 be approved and forwarded to the city auditor for payment. There are no conflicts with this one either.
Second?
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Pages there. And finally, I move that the following named bills of the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate of $15,352.09 be approved for the city auditor to make payment and deduct the funds from the school's account. And I don't believe there are any conflicts on this.
Second?
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next up, I'd like to turn the committee's attention to the Newburyport School Committee Business Meeting minutes of Monday, November 6th. Could I hear a motion, please?
Move approval of the minutes of Monday, November 6th.
Could I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion, correction, changes? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. Moving right along. Next up on our agenda, we haven't located our high school rep yet. He's been missing in action, so he's.
Saw him last week and a reminder.
Oh, and anyway, we'll. There's a phantom over there, so.
I meant to get a cell so I could text him, but I forgot.
We're going to move right on to item number 5 on our agenda, which is an update on safe and supportive schools. I'm going to let the superintendent introduce our presenter.
I just want to remind folks that for the last several years, we really have been focused on improving the safety and security in our schools. And that is really a broad topic. And one of the new interventions that we have this year is our positive behavior intervention supports. And that's one of many, many things that we are doing to help improve our schools to be more safe and supportive for our students. So Christina Gentili, along with Karina Lasia and Tim Mahan, are going to have a presentation to tell you about this initiative. And so I'm going to turn it over to Christine at this point.
Where shall I go? I'm not familiar with the new setup in here.
Probably right at the end, I think. And I'm going to move.
Anywhere you have a
I'm going to go
microphone.
down and sit by Sean because I can't see.
Right here.
Will I be in your way? Please maybe turn around.
I can do it. Where are you?
Not unless
Or do you want to stand over there? There's a microphone over there,
Not
too.
doing all.
Want me to stand over there?
I don't know. This isn't my setup. Oh, okay.
I think.
Oh, I think so.
Probably just right up.
Hi there. So, as Superintendent Vaccaro mentioned, Mr. Mahan and Ms. Masia are here. And these slides are quite honestly a little dry, so I'm hoping that we have a chance to kind of hear what's really happening on this in the schools. I think that I included too many slides, so I'm going to try to zip through some of them. And we can start. So PBIS is the acronym for Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports. There are many other districts, not just in Massachusetts, but in other states that use PBIS. Susan's home state of Connecticut is a big supporter of PBIS and a leader in the country. PBIS, it's not a curriculum. It's not sort of a boxed program to purchase. It's really a framework and an approach that's used to create and organize consistent supports for students. And it's for all students. We're talking about high achieving students, students who struggle across the board. We're implementing this, we're starting pre-K through 8. It can be applied to the high school, but research suggests, and the consultants who we work with have suggested that it's best to start it in pre-K through 8 and establish it, and then look at expanding it into the high school. This is the website. There are a lot of fabulous resources on the website. So this is the definition, which I won't sort of read word for word. The website is actually run through the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Special Education Programs. So the goals, these are the goals of PBIS. It's really about it's not about changing student behavior. Ultimately, that's the goal, but it's about adjusting our systematic and organizational practices to support all students school-wide. And it really focuses on a prevention model. So I'm sure that many of you are familiar with this triangle. This triangle you may have seen when it comes to RTI, response to intervention. So the green zone, those are tier 1 interventions for all students. So about 80% of students, typically they're implemented in the classroom. They're universal supports. That really is the bulk of the focus of PBIS is on that green zone. Then for about 15% of students, you're going to be looking at more targeted group interventions. And then for a small minority, about 5% up at the top, those are intensive individualized interventions. And the focus of PBIS is behavior, and it really works alongside with RTI. So these are the components, the 6 components of PBIS. It's really about introducing, modeling, and reinforcing positive social behavior. So I think, a lot of times, especially, for staff, we certainly, within a classroom, we may have consistent behavioral expectations. Those may not be consistent school-wide. So that's something that the teams at the individual schools have been working really hard. So this just talks about the idea that, kids are not born with bad behaviors, and that really they respond to, as we all know, from working with students as parents ourselves, many of us, they really respond best to positive feedback, positive interventions, and that is the philosophy behind PBIS. PBIS also talks about seeing, when students are struggling behaviorally, seeing it as a skill deficit so that they may not, sort of be willfully misbehaving, but that may be a skill that they're lacking. So the first step is around establishing expected behaviors, and this is where I think if Tim and Karina want to chime in, you'll see this is just an example of something that they call a behavior matrix. So the first step, up at the top you see safe, responsible, and respectful. This is just an example from another district. This district chose to focus on those 3 school-wide rules. And then the PBIS team went through all the different areas in the school and talked about what it would actually look like in these different settings, what each of those expectations would look like. So that is the first step. I can show you a couple more examples. I think this is from Salem High School. And they're developmentally appropriate, so they do tend to look different at the elementary level versus the middle school. So we all know, the students need to be available to learn, and this this focuses on that sort of foundational level, talks about structure. And then when we went through the training, I'll sort of speed through this a little bit, but we learned that for a child to learn something new, it needs to be repeated on average of 8 times. For adults, it's 25 times. And a lot of times we're dealing with that second situation when a child has an inappropriate behavior and we're looking to replace it with something new. They have to repeat that new behavior an average of 28 times, which obviously is quite time consuming. So the other part of PBIS is creating an acknowledgement system. Some of our schools, a lot of our schools already have some system of acknowledging positive student behavior. The Mullen has a great bulletin board around this. I understand the Mullen is also using hand stamps. And it also talks about large school or whole school assemblies to acknowledge behavior. So these are just some visuals that I'll sort of go through. Again, these are just examples. We're at the early stages of implementation. And then that gentleman down there is a custodian, and he, in another district, and at the end of every day, he gives out a golden plunger award to the cleanest classroom. So the kids sort of race in to see if they've gotten the golden plunger award. And then the last component is discouraging inappropriate behaviors. So this is where really, PBIS helps to create a consistent discipline referral process and clarifying what are behaviors that are going to be handled on the classroom level, what are behaviors that will be sent to the office. And this is sort of a flow chart from another district. You can see the categories: minor classroom behaviors and major office behaviors. PBIS looks at data around attendance, suspension. We have not gotten to these data pieces yet. The Bresnahan has done a staff survey around PBIS. And these are just examples. Once PBIS has sort of been up and running, districts use it to look at the number of office referrals based on the time of day, based on grade, based on location, which can help administrators and staff target problematic areas. So again, we're not at that point yet, but we're working up to that. So research, there's a lot of research on PBIS. It's very well established throughout the country. And maybe it would make sense if Greenington, do you want to just chime in with kind of where your teams are? At this point, every school except the high school has a building-based team. We've had several days of training. The teams are meeting regularly.
We are in the process of finalizing the matrix, which is the foundation for lesson plans when we start teaching students the expected and unexpected behavior modeling, practicing with them, and then releasing on a gradual system, and obviously reinforcing and rewarding every student that is showing us that behavior. Staff is a major part of this plan, so we also, when we are making those plans, we also thinking about how provide reinforcement and recognition to staff that is really taking this on in a positive way. This is not a top-bottom type of thing that everyone needs to buy in and implement with fidelity. So I think we have a great response from staff in seeing just by the Safe and Supported Schools course and the trauma courses with the things that we have in place already in terms of zones of regulation and the positive reinforcements that we have in the classroom in itself, so making that universal throughout the school, as well as bus and hallways, recess, cafeteria is the route that we want to go. So it's been great to work with a multidisciplinary team. We have a team of 8 educators that are really invested in making this happen for our Bresnahan School, which is really the foundation for this program, and we hope it's going to be very successful.
And we, one of the things we've noticed already is just by talking about it, people are already starting to try different things. We're trying to be very thoughtful in our approach to getting teachers to buy in. I worked in a district in which it wasn't as thoughtful and it was more inconsistent because people weren't bought in, they didn't understand it, and it kind of spun for a little bit. It takes about 3 to 5 years to do it well. And we'd like our teachers to kind of hit the ground running with it. So we finish our last training on Tuesday of next week, and after that we'll start presenting piece by piece and getting the staff to understand and own it, and then really push for full implementation next fall.
And we are running on the same cycle. So although it's 3 different schools, we are really coordinated on how we are implementing, the way we're introducing to staff, and also when we plan to fully get into this.
Can I ask a little bit about the staff training and what that entails?
Part of it is living it. So it seems kind of silly to go to a group of adults and acknowledge their showing up on time and having good behavior at staff meetings, but you know, part of the research will tell you that, and I tell this to my wife all the time, it takes 5 positive reinforcers for every 1 piece of feedback to get improvement on a person, and she feels like the feedback's more important, but we're working on that. So with staff, it's the same thing. You want to say, you know, I really love that you show up on time every day, and all these little things that we take for granted. It's a little like, Mother's Day. You should tell your mom you love her every day, but sometimes you need like a concrete reminder that you should do that. And Mother's Day does that, and PBIS does that for us. We should remind our staff that they're doing a good job when they're doing a good job. We should remind our kids they're doing a good job when they're doing a good job. And PBIS is that concrete piece to go, oh yeah, I need to do this consistently because it's going to pay off for me in the long run.
And we've had, as Tim mentioned, next week we'll have our 3rd day of intensive training that involves all of the teams. And then after that, every school has 1 to 2 coaches, and so there will be a coaches training as well. And with the consultant who we're working with, they have additional consultation for the coaches. So it's a pretty intensive and robust training, and the people who are involved, the staff who are involved, are so enthusiastic. I mean, it's exciting. They're excited.
I think the training too, to answer your question, Michelle, it helps you shift your mind into try to ignore the things that bother you and acknowledge all the great things that are happening around you. As human beings, we tend to always focus on the noise versus on everything else that's happening and is going well. So it's a mind shifting of, let's reinforce everything that's going well, because that is going to create a momentum. And obviously you are going to address what's not going well, but in a different way. You are going to teach, you are going to model, and you're going to practice, and then hopefully continue to reinforce as you see it demonstrated.
How was this particular program selected versus other approaches?
That's a great question. This, as I said before, it's really not a curriculum, and to that extent, there really isn't anything else like it. If you go onto the website, it's been vetted by the U.S. Department of Education. There's so much research behind it. There are many other districts using this particular approach, so it's sort of like, in some ways, it's the behavioral side of the academic RTI triangle.
The data you put up from 05 then, those are the people who created this program, and so now we are 15 years into its implementation.
I don't know when it was created, sort of,
Well, that first chart you put up, you had 2005.
Oh, I think that was probably another, I believe that was another district. I would have to look back. I think that was another district.
2000. See, this one I'm
Sandra.
looking at.
1995, 96.
Yeah, I'm not,
That seems like it's even before this.
I know, that's why it didn't make sense.
honestly, I'm not sure. That may have just been an example.
Okay.
Have you been finding, and I don't know if somebody else can answer the question, have you been finding that you need to tweak anything the schools have been doing in terms of discipline and suspensions and office referrals as you implement this?
That's a really good question. We're not at that point yet. So we're still, in terms of kind of the phases, that first step is creating the behavioral matrix. We're still on that step. Each team also creates a lesson plan for every area where it will be taught. So for example, if the expectation is, okay, we're gonna have safe behavior in the hallway. This is what it looks like to have safe behavior in the hallway. The teams have been working on the lesson plan for having safe behavior in the hallway. And then we're at the point where we're trying to figure out how that is gonna be rolled out. And then we're also talking about an acknowledgement system. So we have not gone to that next step of talking about a discipline, system. I expect that it will require some tweaks. I wouldn't be surprised if it did. I think, there's room for more consistency, I'm sure.
Mr. Mann, I would also say that in the last 4 or 5 years, that due to changes in the law, that I think that we have seen a decrease in our suspensions, for sure, and that we have been trying really hard to keep kids in school and to offer alternatives. So I think that's really changed since I've been here, from my first year here
Right.
till now. So I think
Right.
that our focus on keeping kids in school and finding alternatives, I think that's all part of this system as well.
Well, I would hope, and that's where the direction I was heading in, I would hope that this would support that, the school committee's interest and the community's interest in keeping kids in school as much as we can. So,
I think one of the aspects it's going to impact is a lot of this is more data-driven. So for us, like one of the things we looked at was we don't really record well enough like locations of where things happen. So that might be in a note or something like that. So we've added that to one of our discipline referral sheets. And that gives us the ability to then, okay, if everything's happening in the playground, we need to then reteach the playground. We need to relook at a system for the playground. And that goes to the long term of keeping those kids in school because you've retaught, you've redone some things. But without the data, sometimes you're just like, it feels really bad at the playground. Is it? I don't know. And when you can look and say, yes, the majority of our referrals are there, then we teach it, we do it differently.
And Karina, just to follow up on that, could you talk a little bit about what the BRES has done? I think it's 2 days a week for recess.
Yes, we have the alternative recess system in place that it's the PE teachers went to a national conference and got an idea of aligning the zones of regulation to recess. They also did survey the students and found out that they were very bored with having very little opportunities. Either you throw the ball on the wall or you are in the playground without having other opportunities. So, but then you do have the kids that enjoy that. So we needed to find a middle ground. So what we did was we implemented 2 days of the alternative recess where kids have their own self-selection of what type of activities they would like to do. Some like to read, some like to do yoga, some like to be part of the running club, some like to practice the skill of football that they just learned, or a new game they have been taught in PE. Some like to do the hula hoops, and the choices are tremendous. And it's really child-driven, based on how they are feeling, and that's why we connect to the zones of regulations, because if I'm happy and I want to run around and I can do that, but if I'm just not feeling too well today and I want a collar, I can do that as well.
And it's all color-coded, right?
Color-coded.
Because I saw also some of the volunteers that come in are dressed like in blue if they're in the blue zone that day, and I just thought what a nice way to, are those volunteers or are those teachers?
Those are
who
our monitors, and they actually dress based on the color of the area they are going to be supervising.
Right, I thought that
So
was.
if the student has a question or need assistance, it's an easy way to locate that person to, seek out the help that they need.
Are you hoping to expand that?
I think kids love it, maybe not 100%. It's difficult to have both places open at the same time. I think we have a happy medium at this point. We'll see, maybe next year. It's all kids driven, so I think we could survey the kids again and perhaps switch to 3 and 2 versus 2 and 3. So we want them to guide us on what's making most sense for them.
Thank you.
I'm going to try to word this question because I think it connects what you guys are talking about with what's up here, and a fear I have, and if something I feel in my own school and with my own kids at times, and things I've been reading about, that we oftentimes do too much of the managing of kids' days and minutes. And we are creating a place where, and when I place, I don't mean Newburyport schools, but a modern culture where kids are not working anything out. They are going to the man in blue, or going to the hallway lesson, or going to the designed hula hoop activity. And I know they're choosing that, so it's not like they're being forced into it or saying you have to do hula hoop for a week or something like that, but at some point it worries me. And I don't know when, I guess, to age out of it, at what point do we start releasing this control so kids are just in the hallways or just at recess? Because they're having a hard time with that. And that's pretty well documented these days.
Well, when they are at recess on the playground, they are at recess.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of conflicts happen there, and that was not the justification of creating an alternative recess. It's a justification of teaching skills that kids may be missing. So I think that the kids that can self-select and be successful is fantastic, but you have the kids that lack the skill and require the teaching. And I think PBIS speaks to that. It's to the kids that don't have the innate ability of developing a skill just by observing. They need specific instruction on a skill. The kids that innately show us those skills, I think we want to continue to reward them and moving them forward. For the kids that don't, we haven't had a solution to that yet, and that's what we hope that the PBIS is going to bring us.
And I think the other piece too is that if PBIS is done well, I actually think that it enables the classroom teacher to take a step back, because the kids know, they get to the point, they know what the expectation is for recess. So they're going out there, and it's not, the monitors or the classroom teachers are not having to kind of, there's a system in place, and it's globally supported. They're hearing a consistent message. And I know, the Bresnahan has done a great job, for example, with the voice levels, and you see that, and so you walk through the halls, and all that someone has to do is this, and that frees up things, I think, in a way that speaks to your question potentially.
Just, David, I think that's a worry most people have. In 2017, as a parent, I worry about the same thing. When are my kids going to have just the freedom to just be kids, right? But I will say that as a school system and running a school, an elementary school that attends to children from 3 years old to 9 years old, perhaps 10, that's our major responsibility, is to teach them safety and how their behavior is perceived by others and how others' behaviors affect us. So It's not to structure them so tight that they feel confined. It's to really provide them a safe environment that they feel like they can be themselves and get the help when they need the help. But I hear you, and I've had that same conversation with many parents as well as a parent myself. So I see where you're coming from.
Great, thank you.
Just a comment. One of the things that I like about the way this approaches kids and reflects my own experience years back working with a model of rehab out of Boston University is that you're really looking to identify whether it's a lack of skill, whether the skill is something that they don't have, or somehow they're not applying the behavior that's required because they don't get a sense that it works, or that which I think takes sort of a step back from the much more simplistic saying, well, that's a bad kid, or that's a kid who's just this, or, that it's just really looking at it as in terms of what do we need to do to provide either skill teaching or resource support for kids so that they can succeed at what they choose to do. And that model really resonates with me because I worked within a similar model that was data-driven, and it was very effective.
That's exactly it. You hit the nail on the head. That's exactly it.
Hi. So you're looking to implement this sometime next year. Is that the plan, or?
That is the plan in the fall. And again, we've already started implementing. Every building is at a somewhat different place, but by and large, in mostly, I would say, a similar, position.
Yeah.
So most buildings are not. All buildings are not at a point. It's a thoughtful process, and we're not at the point to sort of roll it out normally.
Right. Sure.
The start of the fall is really the best time to do that.
Sure. And I know Ms. Marcia just spoke very eloquently and articulated the importance of safety, yet as I thumb through this reading, I don't see the word safety. It doesn't mean I don't need to see it, but I'm assuming that, I guess, preventing problems and reducing intensity of existing problem behaviors equates with safety. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, we're fortunate in the school district where we have a lot of experienced teachers, and I think a lot of them and the principals in the room can attest to this. Are pretty good at managing their classrooms. I'm not saying everybody is. I'm just saying I would say in general, if you've worked here a long time, you've got some success in managing your classroom. How do you anticipate, or do you anticipate teachers who've had that good experience, if you will, or have skills in classroom management adjusting to the system? Any thought about that? And I guess the other side of this question is, or functional question, how do you deal with the student who has deficits, in tolerating authority in the classroom? So.
To your first question, I know at our last training day, I sat with some of the NOC staff, and we had a great conversation about how each team has its own acknowledgement system. They've got the NOC Rock, they've got all that, a bag of chips, all these cool creative acknowledgement systems. And the great thing about PBIS, which I think kind of speaks to what you're asking, is that there's room for existing classroom, not just room, but they encourage you. If you have a classroom practice that's working, you're not giving it up. We're not saying everybody, you've got to have the jar of pom-poms. It's really about, and so in that conversation, we realized, those individual team acknowledgement systems, they're important to the culture of the NOC, and the teachers wanted to keep them in place. So that's what's great about it. It's flexible. In terms of, how do you deal with a student who has trouble with authority?
Deficits. I'm trying to use some of the nomenclature, yeah.
I mean, it would be impossible for me to honestly meaningfully answer that question. I think that the philosophy that I kind of use is what is the function
of their behavior. What are they, what's in it for them? You know, they're doing what's working. Kids do what works to get what they need, and they keep doing it as long as it keeps working. So if a student is resisting authority, is it, you know, and we've done so much work on trauma as well, you know, that's something that enters into it a lot of times. I think that the great thing is that in the time that I've been here, I've seen us as a district grow so much in terms of the resources that we can even bring to the table to answer a question like that. And I've seen so much evolution in people's understanding, I think, of students. So that's not I guess that's not really an answer to your question.
No, I was looking at your flow chart, and again, I'm trying to tie this together a little bit, looking ahead at how this impacts, again, the teacher who has had that, I'll say, excellent classroom management skills, the types of problems that you're gonna butt your head with, which is good to hear that there's more resources to deal with those, but then eventually how that teacher is gonna get evaluated, you know, with incorporating the system or whatever, given the new teacher evaluation system.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just trying to look ahead at where, you know, but I like what you said about the flexibility and being able to add things that are working in terms of positive,
Yep.
you know, rewards and things like that.
And the PBIS teams, you know, as Karina mentioned, there are at least 8 people on the Bresnahan team. So those teachers who have an expertise, they've been, a lot of them have been part of this process, and that's going to continue to be the case.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Harkar?
Just to address from my own perspective, Steve, the point of something like this is to help educators, because I saw on one of your slides that says we have to train teachers, not students, and that we have to teach teachers that the things we do with students shouldn't be about authority. They should have a better purpose to that.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, so if students are having an issue with authority,
Yeah.
I think we have an issue with flexing our muscles a bit too often.
Right. I raised the issue of authority because of my past experience. That was one of the largest objectives that, in what I was doing, teachers had to deal with. So I'm just trying to not raising it as an issue per se. I'm just raising it from my own experience.
No, so I'm saying is that's how you deal with the student who has a problem with authority, is you make it about something other than your authority, and then when they shift their behavior, they're not giving anything up.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I didn't mean to dismiss you. I thought you were going to
Oh,
keep going.
I thought, yeah, I'm happy to answer.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't know if you were going to go through the rest of these.
You know, I think.
But that's fine.
Yeah.
I didn't.
No, and I think in the interest of time, and if people have questions, please
Sure.
feel free to email me. Okay?
Nice initiative, and thank you for coming. Sounds good. Number 6.
I remember.
We're now gonna start an open meeting school committee discussion on, Sean, you can't leave, on later, I know, I'm kidding, later start times. I don't think I need to go through all the history of what's occurred up until now. We did have some lengthy presentations, I think, from each one of our buildings. And this is the school committee response to those presentations, to all of the information that we have received to date. I would like to, we were sent an email today from, I believe, Alex Coyer, who isn't here this evening. And I ran copies off for each school committee member and if anyone in the audience. This is quite a document about start time changes in high schools of Massachusetts. Did everybody get to see this? And it was generated, I believe, yesterday by the Masconomet School Committee. So I just wanted to make sure that each school committee member is looking at a copy of it, of this now. Give me another. And this is a good document from our reference because it includes an update on what an awful lot of schools in Massachusetts are doing with their later school start time issues. So it is a hot topic, and it's very much on the minds of a lot of people. I think you heard at the beginning that there is no one on this school committee that doubts the scientific evidence that has been presented toward this issue. But you also did hear of some issues based on school. So I'd like to begin to open up this conversation. For now, I would like it to be school committee members, and then at the end of our discussion, we'll decide whether we want to have an additional session of public comment, so those of you in the audience can ask us questions or state your purpose. So I am going to turn this over initially to Mr. Menon and Mr. Hockheiser, who have been the school committee reps on this committee. So, gentlemen, Mr. Menon.
Yeah, I'm glad we have this opportunity to have this conversation. I haven't been as intimately involved with this project as a number of people in the community have, but I've put in my fair share of time on it. And to sort of take a snapshot of where I think we are right now, we went through a process that was a fairly contentious, at times, process to try to come up with a recommendation for the school committee to then act on. In hindsight, that process yielded one option. And a concern that I have is that it is possible to think that that option doesn't work and still want to do late start. And if people vote their conscience, they're going to be voting an option down because they just don't think that's the option that's going to work. There are some things that I think haven't been in place that need to be in place to move this forward. I think that we need to have strong administrative leadership on this, and I think that there has been cooperation and facilitation, but I have to say that I don't think that there's been the kind of leadership here that there's been in other districts around this issue. There's got to be building leadership, and there's got to be some leadership from the faculty as well. And while I don't want to delay the implementation of this, because again, if we have a consensus, the consensus is that let's figure out how to do this. The schools themselves did a lot of work looking at this. My concern was that the reports were helpful, they were useful, but they also were inconsistent. I felt that some of the schools really took our challenge to heart, which was to identify obstacles and come up with solutions. And I feel like there were some schools that were so overwhelmed by the challenges that they just did not really have a lot of conversation or offer us a lot of insight into their conversation about solutions. So I want to see this happen. I do not want to go forward with this initiative carrying a no vote on my back here at the school committee. I don't want the school committee to vote no on later start and then continue to try to move forward on it. And I also don't want to delay this indefinitely. And I want to have a very clear plan of how we are moving forward between now and another time, and I will suggest one in the future when we consider this. And to that end, I have done a lot of brainstorming and talking to people about what I think are really important elements that we can do between now and when we take this up that haven't been done to this point. And I'm happy to share that, but I just wanted to put that out there. essentially what I'm saying is I personally would, if we took a vote on this, I would vote to support it, to support this plan, because I think it is really important for us to be doing this. But I don't believe that the plan is the best plan we could come up with.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Hofhauser?
I think after all the time we've been through this, the one thing we failed to do is to change people's minds within the school. And I would say, I don't even know if we've changed people's minds out of the school. Meaning that, for example, a group of people here have always been in favor of this. I don't know that we've, like, the science hasn't been compelling enough and the plan hasn't been strong enough to bring anybody on board. The faculty survey that Michael Parent sent out last week made it clear that the overwhelming majority, meaning that all but maybe one or two of the high school teachers have absolutely no interest in this. I think maybe even one or two only mentioned the benefits for the students. Even last meeting as all the presentations were going, nobody started with, these are all the things it's going to do for the students, so much as these are all the problems it's going to present as logistics for the schools. So we have failed to compel people. And we failed to do it on the big picture in that sense. I think Bruce, what you were just saying about coming up with one and only one solution, I mean, there weren't a ton of them out there, but even the two most viable ones in the cost neutral, because the third one was $500,000 in operating budget a year, or $200-something thousand in operating budget if we only wanted to do the NOC or only wanted to do the high school. But the two cost neutral options we came up with, nobody was happy with them either. So we failed at every level. We haven't been able to ultimately move anything forward. I think I even said last week that all of the problems that the schools presented were the problems we named at the very first meeting. We didn't come up with any new problems anymore. We came up with any new solutions. And when we read things from other districts that have tried it or are thinking about it or have done it, they have the same solutions. Like, I think this problem has been vetted. So it's really a matter of coming up with how are we going to do it here in Newburyport, if we want to, and how we're going to do it. It sounds like we want to if we can come up with a way to do it. But we don't have a way to do it, and that was very clear. That was very clear last week, and it's disappointing, truthfully, because we haven't, come to rally. It'd be like, if we want to say we want to make the schools safer or bring the suspension rate down because we know it's good for kids, but they're like, this kid's annoying, I want to suspend him anyway. At some point, you have to change the hearts and minds, and I will say that it doesn't seem to me as if administration or teachers, or for that matter, the students, and Mike Parent made a great point in an email last week, said, students haven't really come to talk to us, and we haven't really actively, as outside of the surveys we've sent out, we haven't actively found, what they think. I know my own daughter would kill me if I took away her afternoons, quote unquote, but that's besides the point. The administration and the teachers are not on board with this. And so the question really becomes, at some level, are we prepared to, in a heavy-handed manner, even consider levying something upon the schools that they're clearly said that they're not ready to do? And to me, that's a very tough move. And whether or not it fell apart, at what level of leadership, whether it was the committees or the sports, I don't really know. I would say it fell apart every which way, which is a problem.
Mr. Decanter.
I think Mr. Hawkeiser really touched on a very clear point, is that we don't have the support for this within the schools. And I think part of that goes back even a step further. It's not just about the science. The science presents a solution. But I don't think either the teachers have really stopped to consider if there is an issue that needs a solution. Do they have a problem with tardiness in first period? Do they have a problem with kids falling asleep in class? When they give the same quiz to different sections of their class, the one that meets in the first period, does it do any better or worse than the second period? I don't think we've gotten to that level of really understanding the issues. If you take a look at the research and the scientific issues, the scientific research speaks very eloquently about the psychological benefits, the happiness, the health reasons for doing this. But it doesn't necessarily speak to what the teacher is looking at, which is academic performance. There are assumptions made in a great deal of the data that says, oh, if the kid is happier, better rested, healthier, they will do better academically. And intuitively, that's right. But there is no hard evidence that says, hey, we compared the academic performance of A versus B, and we've seen that change. I take it back. There is one study that I was able to find, a middle school in, I believe, Minnesota. But there's been very little. The research has been focused very much on the psychological and health benefits, which are there, but not on the academic thing. So I don't think we've gotten to the heart of our school community in getting them to understand what it is that we're trying to do here. Every time anybody has posed some objection, we hold up our bundle of papers that say, but the scientific evidence says. Yeah, the scientific evidence says that, but is it really addressing what the teachers are seeing and what the teachers believe is best for the kids? There's so much that we get paraded across our table here on a regular basis of things that are good or better for the kids. But when it comes to us, we have to decide on the priority. Where are we going to invest our resources? And it's not just financial resources, it's our time. Change is difficult. Any change is difficult. And if we go into this without having adequately sold it in across the district, we're going to have a very difficult time with this. And I think we're going to be kicking ourselves down the line for not having taken the extra time to make sure we get that buy-in that we need. People will know that one of my points of personal fascination is foreign languages, so I'm just going to close with a Spanish proverb here, and that says, voy despacio que tengo prisa. It basically means, I'm going slowly because I'm in a hurry. And I think that is a little bit about what I feel we need to do at this point in time.
Yeah, we have in our hands, and people haven't had the time to review it, and I would really encourage you to review it, the research of somebody from the Masconomet Regional School District. And to Nick's point, what are the teachers seeing? There's tremendous information in here, and I would really love to see if we can get permission to put this on our district website. I would love for the community to see this. But just to tell you what teachers are seeing in Biddeford, Maine, a 20% decrease in Fs during period 1, 52% decrease in middle school tardiness, 26% decrease in high school absenteeism. In Nauset, a 38% decline in the numbers of Ds and Fs, an 88% decrease in students suspended for disciplinary reasons. And Sharon, most faculty agreed that the students are less sleepy and more engaged in the morning, and unexcused tardiness has dropped significantly. The data is beginning to really reflect what I think we intuitively know. There are, I think that here in the Cape Ann League, certainly, we are at the cutting edge in having these conversations. Masconomet is having these conversations. Georgetown is having these conversations. There are other schools that aren't having it. But it looks like a significant number of schools. The data here is looking at the top 50 schools in Massachusetts. 65% are in the process of actively considering.
And I think, Bruce,
so we're not at the cutting edge of it. We're,
if I may, Bruce, I think you're absolutely right. However, I think we need to establish the baseline. Do we have a problem of tardiness that needs to be addressed with a reduction? Do we have a problem of absenteeism? I don't know what the level of absenteeism is at the high school, or tardiness is at the high school. Maybe the superintendent does.
Not without the daily reports. I
Yeah.
print those reports.
But so,
No,
is
I
that an
agree.
issue? I haven't heard from teachers who teach first period and say, God, I hate that period. I can't make it to first period without having 2 cups of coffee to start my day with. And here I'm trying to get kids to react to me that haven't had any of that. Some of them haven't even had a good breakfast. And so I haven't heard that from teachers yet.
I'll just say that I just resent everybody a resource sheet that I made going on 9 months ago. It's got a whole section on a bunch of different papers with academic performance in the data and how it's been affected by districts who made the shift. So we can read those again. I think that's why we were asked at the beginning if we believe in this or not. So it's all there, Nick.
I do believe in the data. I said so earlier, and I do believe it.
I'm just saying I've sent it to you a couple times about the increase in academic performance and the things that are written, so we can read them or not.
My answer to that is much of that data was not peer reviewed. It was not what you would consider academically.
The section's there. I don't want to talk about that now.
No, I understand.
One of the things, I guess, to reiterate the point that here we are a year and a half, 2 years into this, and we haven't collected any information. Do we have a tardy problem at the high school? We should know that, and that should have been part of a high school presentation that came to us, not how many times the golf team's going to have to leave on a Thursday afternoon. It's just like those sorts of things. And as much as I would like to steamroll over the lapses of information and the lapses of process, now I'm stuck at the point of where to go with that. But you're right, we should have had that data. We should have that data. I mean, I think, couldn't Aspen just give us that data?
Yeah, we can get that.
Right, so it shouldn't be that difficult to have, but the fact of the matter is, in the same sense, when we spoke to the athletic director last year, what was the answer? His response is, I haven't been asked to bring that up yet, or we haven't had this yet. So it's sort of astounding to sit here, because I totally agree. We don't have information like how many Fs do we have on A block. I'm assuming it was generated sometime when we did the schedule change to go from waterfall to not waterfall, or whatever we want to call it, but that none of that was part of the reports that we've been given over the past years. And again, when I read all the responses from the high school teachers, they clearly haven't sat down at a faculty meeting and said, here guys, read this and talk about it. Turn and talk about some of the research that the school committee and the parents in the community have been talking about for 2 years. And I guess on that note, I want to say that this isn't just a normal thing that's brought before us. In the 3 states that I've taught, in the multiple school districts that I've taught, I have never seen an item come from the community with such tenacity and longevity as this. Nothing. Whether it's safety or failures or AP classes or honor, whatever you want to call it, the group of parents, and tell you the truth, that's one of the reasons why I first met with Alex and Jay and Tara, because they deserve somebody to sit and listen. And not that everybody wasn't, but it was at a stalemate. This is not just a regular issue. The parents here are not just kind of interested and heard about something. Clearly, Hagen Rivers from Masco is way above and beyond any level of community involvement that I've ever heard of. And I think even the superintendent there would agree that the report is just a minor bit of what's indicative of her page. If you guys haven't seen the Masco Start School Later Time page, it is off the charts. It's like Bill Gates paid someone and a team of people to put it together. So it's just, I guess, disappointing that we're here.
I also think a couple other things are happening and you alluded to it. When you look through this document, a lot of the schools that are mentioning changing belong to part of the Middlesex League. And so I'm wondering if that sports group is a little bit further ahead in thinking about making changes to their sporting schedule. If you look at this, there are, 15 schools that have mentioned, not that it was asked, but that they are in the Middlesex League. The other thing that I think is happening here in Newburyport, and we've talked about it a little bit in our meetings over time, and I know that the NOC is internally discussing whether the NOC goes to 990 as the high school is now. So, and that is in conversational stage. What it means is that in Massachusetts, middle schools have the option to go with high school scheduling, which talks about 990 hours of student engagement, and the elementary, which is 900 hours of student engagement. Currently, our middle school is at that 900 hours of the elementary level, but they're seriously talking about perhaps revamping that. So that is in perhaps the future look of what scheduling looks like here and how we start and how we stop. And I'm going to agree with the people who have commented. We haven't found the information that we need to do this diligently. There are a lot of things that, as you know in the audience, we need to consider, not the least of which is the sports schedule or funding for the buses. We all want to do what's best for the students, and right now, I don't believe we've got the plan to do that. Although I firmly believe that this is something that we should continue to look at. I understand fully that that's frustrating for some of the members of the audience. However, this has to be done right. And I know it's been a long time and we've learned a lot, and I don't want to see us stop this. So I would like to keep this an open discussion for the moment. Mayor?
I agree with a lot of what's been said, and I think that this is a really good document, because I think what it does is that, and I'm grateful for Alex for pushing this forward, because I think we really needed a document like this that talked about what's happening in other school districts. And you can see that other school districts are going through the same kinds of challenges that we are. I have to say that I am disappointed in the presentations from the schools, because it certainly left me feeling like this was going to be really challenging and really difficult. I'm disappointed that we don't have more buy-in from the high school, but we're also in the middle of some major changes at this point. I also don't see how we got locked into a 30-minute time change. when all the data says that we shouldn't start school till 8:30. So why did we say 8 o'clock? I don't understand why we.
It's a compromise.
We had been told that 8:30 was out of the question, but that 8 o'clock was very approachable from a sports perspective.
Why?
So,
So what's the point? If all the literature tells you in research.
because Dr. Owen, when she came, said that a school that had done a half an hour still had shown benefits. So we were trying to compromise really with the elementary school.
The idea is that it would be.
Huge step, though, and I think
Yeah.
if we're gonna do it, we should do it right. We should get
Fully
to
agree.
8:30, we should, look at the high school, we should look at the middle school. We have a new principal who'll be starting, hopefully July 1. We'll have a new superintendent. Hopefully this would be part of the important conversations with hiring new administrators that they, support, believe in, and will help lead our school district to make this happen. I think that I'm very encouraged by a lot of the comments in the other schools, talking about, it has been, difficult, but it was one of the best changes that we ever made, and that we can't go back, and that we really need to push for this to happen. So it sounds like we have education to do with our teachers at the high school, in particular. Do we try to do another community forum and bring the teachers and parents together to try and build more support for this as we go forward? I'm certainly open to trying to champion this, to make this happen. I think we can align ourselves with the work that Masco's doing and partner with them. Georgetown also is concerned about transportation, but those are multiple voices with Cape Ann lead. I like the comment that a parent made that, so they leave, on occasion, but we can work more with flexible schedules and maybe people can make up that time at another point. I don't think this has to be so black and white in terms of here's all the doom and gloom of why this can't happen. I think that we should be able to, especially with the bus contract coming up, I think we should take a close look at that again in terms of how we can look at bus routes and schedules. And I would like to just throw out a compromise that I saw that Hopkinton is doing. They call it the Hiller Day, and I know St. John's Prep does it. 1 or 2 days a month, they allow high school students to come to school late. Just to, the second Wednesday of every month is you come to school at 9 o'clock. And that could be sort of a compromise move that we make for September to see if we could make that happen, to allow students to sleep in 1 day a month. And, as we begin to move forward to implement this for the 1920 school year.
Mr.
I haven't spoke yet, so I just wanted to add my 2 cents, but I'm absolutely for this as well. I wasn't involved in the whole process, being so new. I was kind of one of my first meetings, but I also was left after all those individual school presentations with a lot of questions, because I wasn't as familiar with the process. I just felt like there was a big piece missing. We heard a lot of the challenges, and I think, again, none of us were surprised by some of those answers, but I just thought, and again, I think we've lost a couple of weeks now, and I'm glad we're doing this now, but I feel like we've lost a huge chunk of time and an opportunity where I think those leadership teams really should have come together at that point and then put together a plan that worked. And again, I think they were looking at it very black and white. So again, I just think this is so worthwhile. I think this is amazing. I mean, this is where it's going. So it's either, do we want to be in front of it, or do we want to be jumping on the train at the end? And the fact that, especially in the Cape Ann League, they haven't jumped on board yet. I mean, this is just very encouraging that 83% either start school at 8 or are considering it or have already done it. So, I love the fact that Newburyport has been working on this for 2 years. I think that's unfortunate that we're still working on it, but the fact that, we're kind of leading the charge, I think that's important. But again, with the unique situation we're in with, new leadership coming in, I'm glad that we're all talking about this now, and that this can be really a main part of the conversation to see who we bring in next. And, do they have experience with this? Are they behind it? And, do they have ideas that, maybe they can jump right in and kind of push this charge forward? So.
And not to rephrase, but you and I did have the conversation, and your question was, how did we wind up with only one option?
Right.
That was then sent out to the teachers. So I did ask you to speak with Mr. Menon to give you a little background.
I did, so that was just my original.
Right, but I think that's coming up again. We were, there was one option, and it was a half hour later. It was pretty much cost neutral. It didn't seem to ruffle the feathers of the Cape Ann League. Everybody said, well, we could do it, but, so, just to clarify, Mr. Menon.
If we're going to put some space, some time between now and making the decision, part of my frustration has been that this has, I call it the slow walk, and this has been slow walked, and we haven't really seen the kind of leadership that I think is going to be important to this. If I'm going to put some time before I then again review this decision and come up with a plan, I have some real specific things that I want to see happening between now and the next time we talk about this, that I want to see happening, that have to happen, so that we've got some of the data, some of the information that we need. One of them is upload this report to the district website. Another is, have we made presentations of this to each school council? Has that happened yet? I want the school councils to be dealing with information.
Just a question, Bruce. When you say presentations to the school councils, do you mean this document?
Yeah, I mean this information, this document, the idea.
No, because this was
Right.
just received today.
Well, I think that it would be really critical. So that's something that I would like to see happen soon.
What about all of it? Like, have the school councils had their own discussion of?
I don't know the answer to that, David. I don't know the answer to that. My guess is that I would certainly think that it came up as a topic of discussion. I mean, Tim, I don't know if you did yet. So I would think that all the schools had that conversation. Because I don't attend the school council meetings, I don't know specifically what happened, but certainly can ask the principals.
I would think that a more effective way to do it than to just have the conversation is to give everybody the same information and then have somebody available to talk about that information and respond to some questions. So I would like, we've done some of this stuff, but we can do it better, and we can do it again. In light of what the mayor has said, I agree, and being involved with the superintendent search committee, I want to make sure that there's a line of questioning that has to do with this as one of the challenges that we face. The teacher contract is coming up. That is a place where we're going to also begin to have this conversation. The bus contract should have an opener in it. We've already had some conversations about that. That's possible. I think that...
Can you define opener?
Opener, yeah.
The next item on our agenda is the bus contract, which is connected to this whole thing, so.
We should, if we haven't already begun collecting data to get a baseline, we should be collecting data, and it should be reported out to us anyway, because it's interesting and it's worth listening to. Baseline data I'm talking about would be tardiness, absenteeism, grades in the first period, nurse visits. There was a significant drop in nurse visits that one of the schools reported when they went to a later start time. Early dismissals and suspensions. Those are all things I think that we should hear about. I also would like to now, seeing that one place where we hit a brick wall had to do with athletics, I would like to talk to those schools and those districts that have made this move and talk with them to find out what was the impact and how did they deal with athletics. To get that information as part of this sort of new look at keeping this moving forward. And I have a number of other ideas, but you know, I would like to sort of be empowered to get some of this stuff done, and I'm willing to drive some of this.
Do you want to look only at the Cape Ann League or outside of the league as well?
No, I would go outside the Cape Ann League to those schools that are already doing this, to figure out what it is we can't do that they can do.
Right. Is there a connection between the leagues? So if the Middlesex League is looking at this, how do we get the Cape Ann League, how do we inspire them to talk to the Middlesex League?
Dual County, you really should look at Dual County League.
That was another one, too.
Yeah, Dual County League, you talk about Weston, Wayland, W schools. And
school schedule.
They're contemplating.
Carlisle.
Yeah. Concord Carlisle, yeah.
Concord Carlisle.
They're contemplating organized a change for the fall of 18.
No, they instituted a half-hour late this year.
It's not what it says in the
Concord
report.
Carlisle,
Oh,
yes.
maybe Concord
Concord
Carlisle
Carlisle's
did,
the other
but
one.
they're looking to change it through the Dual County League. And, you know, the Dual County League is a serious league, as is Middlesex. Not that Cape Ann isn't, but those two are notable.
And
leagues.
Southern Maine just did that, so where Bedford is from, like, Southern Maine just did that. So, I mean, Kyle should know everybody there.
So that's my partial list of stuff that I think we need to be doing if we're going to delay this decision. And I understand part of the reason we wanted to make the decision in December was to allow for a 2018 implementation. And that if we let this slip past January, then that's not going to happen.
Define "we," because I think that's maybe part of the issue.
What?
You know, we say we don't have a driving force behind this. And I don't want to put that responsibility all on our administrators. But I think that there needs to be a good program set out there for moving forward. And when we say "we," who's that "we"?
There's a number of ways that we can define.
But that's where I think we got
Sure.
stuck in the first place, Bruce.
Yeah.
That's all I'm
Yeah. In an ideal situation, we would be administrative leadership who buy into this and feel that it's possible to do. That's who the "we" would be. Less than that, you know, maybe we form a steering committee of people who continue to do this research, continue to report out. You know, maybe we designate somebody from the school committee to, you know, be a point person on this. There have been some regional conversations. We haven't been sort of formally represented as a school committee at those regional conversations.
Right.
I've attended a meeting, but if those are still going on, empowering somebody from the school committee to be our designated representative to those conversations. There's a number of different ways we can look at "we," but there's a list of stuff here, and somebody needs to sort of be saying, this is the list.
That's my point.
Yes.
Is it possible to stipend somebody from the schools? Like a guidance counselor, somebody who knows about processes and has access?
I think that would be a
Yeah,
suggestive
from our
part of,
schools.
I think that would be a suggestion for moving forward if
Yeah.
it,
I mean,
yes.
like legitimately speaking, I'm sure there, even if there was a principal who was really gung-ho about this, it's a time commitment.
That's, yeah.
I think Mr.
So-
DeCantor made a really good point, though. This is all evidence from other schools. The point is, we don't have a lot of
Well, that's right. So
statistical
someone,
analysis
like a
from
guidance
our own
counselor,
homegrown.
could dig this up.
So that has to be a big piece of this,
Yeah, I
to
think it
find out
does.
what's going on currently.
And I think when you take a look at that "we," if we are going to sell this in across the district, and we've got, as evidenced by the presentations that were given to us, that they invested a lot of time in, but not necessarily a lot of alternatives. We have our work cut out to even work with the leadership team. And we're not going to be able to convince the faculty that this is a good idea if we haven't first convinced the leadership team. And I think the leadership team does have a lot of questions, and probably their number one question is, I've got 90,000 things on my plate. And you're coming to me with this big kahuna. How in the world are we going to get this? And you know what? They're somewhat right. And so somehow we need to take a look at that and see where we can go with that. We do have some administrators, I think, that are, in principle, I think if we ask the question that was asked of us earlier, do you believe the science? If we took that question to all the administrators, they'd probably answer it the same way we did. Because everybody wants what's best for the kids. But when that dream hits the reality of what it takes, and I'm not talking necessarily financial, but what it takes to implement a change of this size, is where they get gun shy and perhaps a little resistive. And I'm not sure I blame them.
Mr. Cole, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just a couple of things, and I don't want to recycle what others have said. My first exposure to this was actually when I was chairing the Charter Commission back in 2009, and I was to look at some communities in the southern part of the state, and I had the opportunity to look at the community of Sharon, Mass. And it struck me that in 2009 they were first looking into later school start times. The other thing that was I shouldn't say a big issue, it was a tragic issue that time, was bullying, anti-bullying efforts, tragic loss of young people as a result of bullying. And when I was looking at their school start time group, I was really impressed to see quite a variety of people on that panel, if you will. There were school administrators, parents, and some students, and then Elizabeth Englander, who happens to be a parent from that school district and is also the authority on bullying, and has, I think, came to our Elks Hall a few years later to talk about anti-bullying, if I remember correctly. So I was impressed. I was also impressed that they had either a psychiatrist or a neurologist write on behalf of the schools about the social, emotional impact that these changes could bring. And so I followed that process, and I was really impressed. The year after they did the process, they released the year study, and some of you have probably seen it. But it speaks to the fact that they found that 68% of the people really liked the school start time. 21% didn't. But I'm really impressed with what I read in this report that we were given tonight by the principal. I believe his name is Jose Labano, who said that back then when they first approached it, nobody wanted to do it. But would he go back to that time? I don't have the report in front of me right now. I've buried it in my papers. He said no. So, I mean, I think, Mr. Menon's mentioned that we probably could have had maybe better leadership. I want to mention, I think it's really important to have somebody, preferably a psychiatrist or a doctoral level neurologist, who can represent Newburyport schools and speak to the social, emotional impacts of what the change could be. And I think that's a really important piece to consider, because I don't certainly disagree with the research. And like others have said, and I don't want to recycle it, we all do want the best for our kids. And I think, as Nick said with his Spanish proverb about moving slowly, I heard a statement by Apple the other day. And, Apple said, we don't set out to be first with a product. We want to be the best with that product. And I just think we need to think carefully. I believe in the research. I believe in what's doing best for kids. I just think that there's a few things that we need to add in that would really help parade out all the benefits of such a change. And I recommend, if you haven't seen the one-year report from Sharon, please look at it, because it really talks about all the things, reduced tardiness, and all the things that show, better attention improvement with students in schools. And Sharon happens to be a high-performing school district as well. Oh, yeah. Yeah, just going back to the principal, he said, changing start times, it's hard, it's courageous, but we would never go back. So I thought that was very impressive, and I think if you got Mr. Labano to come up to Newburyport, that would be a big feather in the cap as well.
Did they only change their high school?
No, they changed elementary, started going later. Similar school structure as Newburyport in terms of the number of schools at that time.
Everyone.
We've changed a little bit since we renovated, built the new Bres, but similar school structure.
Yeah, the enrollment's pretty close.
What's that?
I think the enrollment's pretty close.
It is, yeah.
There was a community forum, it might have happened in Masconomet, that Mr. Labano attended.
He did?
Yeah, he's already been up here talking to folks on the North Shore about it.
Yeah, he and I had a lengthy conversation. He sent me a lot of information. And he's very passionate about the fact that he said he would never go back, that it's made a difference.
I mean, I just would have to say that my feeling is that we sort of have an obligation to get this right. We have an obligation to the community to get this right, and that I don't want to leave this conversation without the beginnings of a strategy to get this right. That I don't want a vague, open-ended sort of, we'll pick it up after we hire the new superintendent. I want, there's work to be done now, that we can do now, that we can begin, information we begin to get. So I want us to sort of encourage or designate or delegate or in some way ensure that these things are happening if we're going into this sort of rest period between taking this up again, that the things get done.
I wouldn't call it a rest period, I'd call it a work period.
Whatever we want to call it.
Information gathering.
I just have a question. So I know the original date was set for December, but did you look into it and knew like there's an absolutely last day that we could make a decision on this to implement this in 2018, fall of 2018, or was it just?
We were told the beginning of January.
You were told the beginning of January.
And that was driven by sports.
And
No,
by
it's also driven by
kindergarten.
childcare.
By childcare for parents, right.
Yes.
And kindergarten registration, all those things that people thought needed to be set up in time.
Anything further on the committee?
Can I just re-ask my question, because nobody, is it possible to stipend a school employee to take on a project, leadership on a project like this?
I don't know the answer to that.
Well, I mean, stipends are part of the collective bargaining agreement, and the way that that's been done in the past, I can only speak to my time here. We haven't had a project-based stipend that I'm aware of, not during my tenure. It's just a specific project. I don't know in the past whether or not we've had anything like that.
Well, don't teachers do summer work?
That's curriculum work, yeah, specific curriculum work.
How about NEASC?
No one's stipended for that. Is that maybe, are the chairs? The chairs are? Okay.
And that's
That's every 10
project
years.
Oriented. Well, it's just.
Well, hopefully we only have to do this once.
Well,
And over the next 30 years, it'll balance out.
So, I mean, I think anything's possible in terms of stipends. You'd have to come up with a plan for, what you'd want the stipend to be, and, I would bring that to the president of the union, he'd take it to the leadership of the union, so.
And we would just have to figure out how to pay, because we haven't budgeted for that too, so just,
Right.
But what if there were an administrator that was interested? That wouldn't be a stipend position, would it? It would just be.
It could be bonus, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm just trying to.
Well,
Yep.
you have to remember that a lot of this work is going to have to be done outside of the the regular day in terms of gathering information.
Correct.
So you're talking about.
Going to meetings, going to
Yeah.
places, doing a lot of, and someone's gonna have to
phone calls,
know.
that kind of stuff.
Are there people on the current school committee or future school committee, I guess, that would like to continue to spearhead this and to take charge of the next step? I obviously am not going to be here, so it can't be me. But I guess I'm looking for a point person or two, and then perhaps a group to sit and talk about, as Mr. Decanter mentioned, the information that we need from our own schools, which I think is an important component that we don't yet have. So rather than call it a rest period, I think it would be an information gathering period. Someone needs to actually talk to the nurse. Someone, you know, these kinds of things, these internal kinds of things need to occur. The presentation from or to school councils, someone needs to take that on so that we don't talk about lack of leadership. If we feel this is important as a committee, we're going to have to start being more involved in that leadership.
I also think you need to make a decision around, are you talking just the high school, or are you talking the middle school and the high school?
To move?
And, you know, how far do you want, you know, if you're talking the middle school and the high school, and you're talking about nurses' visits and tardies, you know, if you want that data from both, or do you just want to focus on the high school?
I'd say let's
I'll
get it
get the
on
data
both.
from both.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think you go broad range at this point, and, you know, I
It may,
think I'm not going to
it may illuminate our decision as to where we actually move the times.
But also, I think, you know, the conversation about 990 at the knock is an important one too, which is why we want to talk about bus contracts next. You know, so I think somebody needs to be up to date on that as another component of this.
I'm willing to be a school committee person driving this.
You want help?
I'll do it with them.
Yeah, I'm in.
Okay. All right, then, at this point, you need to begin to generate, I think, what you need, what we're missing, the things that we're feeling aren't going to help us make a decision right now. I'm going to get to that, thank you. I also think, you know, you need to hook up with some members of the community to continue this
You had
conversation.
I think I captured everything in my notes too. But I think you had
I
a pretty good
am willing to
Yeah.
But that was
formally-
brainstorming. I think it would be nice if the three of you got together and think about anything else that we may have missed. So now I'm going to ask the question. Mr. Decanter, do you have something further?
No, I was probably going to speak to the question that you're about to ask, so I'll let you ask the question.
Well, no, I'm not sure you do, because what I'm going to do now is ask the committee if we would like to open up a period of public comment
That was,
on this topic, because Tara stood up 3 times and she's been very nice to me, but we needed to have this conversation first. And so I'd like to hear a motion to open up.
I move to suspend the rules to allow for public comment for a period not to exceed 15 minutes.
Second?
Discussion. Anyone have a problem with that? Mr. Cole?
No.
Okay. We'd like to open up a
We should take
session.
the vote.
I'm sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you for keeping me on track. Now, come on up, state your name.
Eric Flom, earlier.
Can I just ask a clarifying question to the committee? Do we want to go back and forth with this, have a discussion, or do you want this to be public conversation, or do you want it to be public comment?
Conversation.
My
I like
preference is
conversation.
conversation.
Conversation is okay. So long
Should
as
we
the time
vote on that?
stipulation
Do we have to
remains the
vote
same.
on it? All
I
right.
think we all
Aye.
say aye.
All right.
Okay.
I don't want there to be a problem with this in the future. I just want to make sure we're all okay with this.
Someone going to be the timer? Nick, you going to be the timer?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll be quick. Eric Floma was quick earlier. I've heard that the problems that keep coming up about athletics, about childcare, in the parameters of the strategic plan for the mission statement of this board. Parameter number 1, we will make all decisions and take all actions based on the best interest of the student.
I think I stated that earlier, Eric. That's what we want to do.
And how do we shift the teachers and administrators to support this? This is where the obstacle is. We don't have internal support.
Doesn't this board create policy?
You-
It's
but
not
you-
part of the school committee?
You want to come forward, Brian, and talk?
Brian Callahan, 29 Warren Street, future school committee member. Isn't that part of this board's responsibilities, create policy, correct? I just want to make sure I'm on the right page, but yeah.
Yeah, policy is one thing, but when you have to operationalize a policy that impacts the entire community, that's different.
Right.
As opposed to creating a sexual harassment policy.
Right. The problems that we sat in all those meetings, and I've been in every single one the president had, except for one, and all the stakeholder group, the main thing was the bus. Fine, we're not going to do the buses, it's way too expensive. Nobody would ever spend the money on that. Then the thing was, sports. But then Kyle said half an hour is no problem, nothing at all. And then Mike Parent's report was all over the place and said it was not right. So who is it's top down. So who's telling Mike Parent to write the correct report? And who's checking up on those facts? Alex Coyer, right? It should be this board doing all that.
That's what we
I
did.
think
We got the
Parents.
report.
I mean, and I would have said my name when Sean and Bruce said, yeah, we'll point person this, but I've been doing it for years now, and I'll certainly help them as part of the school committee, but we're gonna ask the same questions for how many more years, over and over and over again? And then to Mr. Decanter's point, how different could Newburyport students possibly be than the other schools where these kids everything's great? Now it's better, and there's no way that our students are that much different than the Biddeford, Maine kids. It doesn't make any sense to go on and on and on and on, have another set of surveys.
But the other point about that, Brian, I think is that as a community, it would be advantageous for the school committee to get raw data from our own district.
Well, why is that not happening?
We've already said that the process here was a little flawed.
No, I know,
So,
I agree.
I
But
know-
I want to know why it hasn't happened. Why hasn't someone here called up the superintendent's office and said, hey, please go and tell your principals to give me the data on this stuff? It's kind of forgot about it. I mean, it just never came up. I can't imagine it never came up in conversation. We've been doing this for ages.
I just assumed it would come in the report when they came into the analysis. I assumed that would be
Yeah,
part
I
of
guess
the
that was part of
analysis.
I brought up at one point, I said,
Yeah.
okay, who's going to make sure they're doing this? And
Right.
Mr. Carr's response was, well, we assume they're doing it right. Well, clearly they
Well,
did
now
not.
we know that they didn't.
Thank you.
Well,
Or
I take a little
complete.
bit
Yeah,
of
it
exception
was-
to that. I
yeah.
mean, there was a lot of work. that
I
went
know,
into those
and
reports.
yes, you're right.
Hi, Tara Sullivan, 41 Summit. I have a lot of notes, so I'll try to be really brief. First, the reason why I was standing up is because I have a lot of history with this. And a lot of the things that you guys are talking about with another group, all that's happened. We had Dr. Owens come and present to the community, and we've had a lot of that data and people coming to present and to show the health benefits and the different, the different school districts. The data is there. So I commend.
How many teachers showed up?
And I think that's the point, what I was saying, like, we failed, like, Dr. Owens was amazing. I don't know if anybody went to Dr. Owens as a doubter.
Amazing.
There were some teachers in the audience that night. There weren't a lot of teachers in the audience, but there were some teachers in the audience.
But I think the reason why this is not, this is never going to be something that we can sell as this amazing thing to the community. Because first of all, it's, how do you measure health and wellness? How do you measure that? It's really hard to do that. I think most of the communities that have done that have said, and I will quote Patty Burke, actually a friend of mine who did this 10 years ago up in a school, at high school, South Burlington High in Burlington, Vermont. He said no one wanted to do it. No teachers, no students. They were like, Mr. Burke, I don't want to change, I'm fine, we'll just keep it going. I mean, we talked about behavior. These kids just are doing their thing. No one wanted to change it. He said, if I changed it back today, I'd be tarred and feathered out of town. And that's a quote. And another quote is, he said, I want to tell you that it's child abuse to start school before 8:30 for your high school students. So those are just two, but he said no one was supportive of this. You guys we have to say, this is the time to do something and make a change and say, we're gonna do this. And my parent, you gotta do it. Kyle, you gotta do it. We're saying this is what is the right thing because our students will be better off, health-wise, sports-wise. Maybe we'll win the soccer all-state championship because we had better sleep. The students were better equipped to do it. I'm just throwing these things out there. When you talk to all the principals that have made these changes, they say you can't quantify some of this stuff because it's a health issue. Car accidents, depression, caffeine. Go downtown on any given morning to souffles at 7 and see the line. That's where you're going to find the data. I mean, I know the nurses at the Knox say that, and the Knox Nolan say that they have to go and get food for kids in the morning because most kids don't eat breakfast going to school in the morning because it's too early. I mean, how do you quantify that? I don't know because I don't think that data is there. What we have to do is say the data in the schools that have done it has been positive and we can do this here. It's not insurmountable.
Okay.
I'll agree, and I'll own, maybe you call it my piece of naivete, that I thought we had done our due diligence.
I thought that we had, and if we go back though, I don't understand what else needs to happen.
And I think you and I have had enough conversations, we've had enough conversations that literally every step of the way, I kept going into meetings throughout this and just feeling like I got blindsided.
Right.
And I'm not, like, for better or for worse, people think I'm pretty cynical, but I tend to actually think that people are gonna get on board and like, I was trying to think the best and optimistically of things, and it just, same thing like the workshop meetings where we came down to only having one schedule. We almost didn't even have one option. And a bunch of us wrote up an option and essentially said, because the committee came up with no option, we're gonna present one without the committee. We got lynched, tarred, and feathered, and then people said, okay, we'll jump on board and we'll go with your one option. But literally that whole thing fell apart, and that was, Susan, what'd you call, like 8 meetings of that committee or something like that? Like every week for 2 months? Couldn't come up with a single option that people would even consider. Because the first 6 weeks were just people yelling at each other.
And there were teachers on that
And
committee,
you're right,
and
the
administrators.
teachers, administrators, parents, and it went nowhere. So like, remember, we almost came up with an option without the committee.
It would have been nice, I think, if the committee represented a diversity of opinion among the school folks that were on there. But it became clear to me at the end that there wasn't really a lot of diversity, that these were folks who just, wanted to be on this committee. They worked very hard, but they were skeptical, very skeptical about this idea. And that had a tremendous impact on the whole dialogue. That there wasn't any common ground. There wasn't, and for me, I'm convinced this is the right thing to do. I don't see the purpose in voting on a plan that it's not going to go anywhere. And I don't want to carry a no vote forward. I don't want people to say, well, the school committee voted on it, they voted no. They're voting no on the plan. They're voting no on the plan, and that's what I think will happen. That's my guess. I haven't canvassed anybody because it's open meeting law. I don't canvass. I never ask people how they're voting.
I totally agree with you, but I do feel like if we keep going back to doing the things that have happened over the past couple of years. Anybody that is a parent that's even been supportive of this for 2 years is gonna go, including myself. I mean, my kids are not even gonna benefit from this anymore, because they're gonna be a senior and junior next year, and they're gonna be, you know, like, but I just feel like parents get frustrated at the lack of someone saying, we've done the research, we've done the surveys, we see all the evidence. That in the news last week, Boston Public Schools are trying to make this happen. How many more things have to happen for us to say, we are going to do this? It might not be a popular thing in Newburyport, but this is what we're going to do for the health reasons, for the health benefits. And hey, if it was really awful, we'll go back. I mean, not that we want to say that, but I mean, I just feel like somebody has to say, let's put a stake in the ground and say, this is the way we're moving. And I understand we don't want to, you know, push for a vote if it's not going to happen, but I do also feel like we're in this wheel of continually, you know, gathering data that's...
I think there are a couple things going on in years 3 and 4 to think about. Number one is Musconabit, because they're inching closer. And we know in the league, they're a behemoth. So to ride their wind would make this a lot more feasible.
I remember my parents saying that early on. I mean,
right.
You know, he said, you know, it'd be a lot easier for me if there was other, right, Masco did it.
Right, so Musconabit's one thing. A bus contract coming due is another thing, because we all sat through those bus meetings where Salter was confusing at best, week after week. And they were not creative at all. So to say, hey, how can we do this? They were not brainstorming. So to have an opportunity for a new bus contract, one thing they did say, which sticks in my mind, and it may play out or may not, but if we do go to 990, they told us that the busing would be a lot easier if we had fewer. For them, it wasn't the start time of the day, but it was the end time of the day that made things difficult. So the fact that the knock was offset by 20 minutes makes it awkward. So the bus schedule, upcoming teacher contract, a change in 2 very key leadership positions, Musconabit inching closer, those things I think are different, very real different in years 3 and 4 than we had in 1 and 2. So, not that, I mean, that's solace at its best. But I mean, that's kind of what I'm thinking about. There are some things we can, and people are still really into it. I mean, for me, another piece, I know this is kind of a sidebar, but it reminds me, I know the district wants to start a conversation on homework, and the parallels there are to be unbelievable, because the research is so deeply clear on what's useful and what's not useful, especially for like K-6 homework. And we're all over the map on homework, and to get a homework committee full of teachers who really like to give homework because they want to make kids used to high school is going to be defeating. And so I think we need to look at what went wrong here and think about how to correct that for other initiatives.
Mr. Decanter?
No, 3 minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Are we out of time?
Please.
No, you have 3 minutes.
Go ahead.
Eric Keller, 50 Jefferson. So I guess the only thing I would ask is, it just doesn't seem like you have a process. And I go back to, I said this a year ago, committees have goals. Those goals need tactics to achieve them. Meetings need agendas and action items and people to follow up with those action items. And I've never seen that ever in this committee. So you mentioned Apple Day, they can say that because they have such a disciplined process of building things. And there's no disciplined process in what you guys put on your agendas. If this is a top priority, put it on the agenda and have an action item. Just choose one for 2 weeks. And maybe it's collecting the data, and one person has it, and they come to the meeting next, and Donna or Ms. Sweeney, like, you ask them for the action item. I've never seen that. And it's extremely frustrating. I don't know how you guys get anything done without doing that. The other thing you need is leadership, and you said it tonight. You need a superintendent of the schools who supports this. And I've barely heard from you tonight.
Well, it was their discussion tonight.
Well, there's no leadership, and that's why the teachers aren't supporting it, because Mr. Parent doesn't support it, because you guys sort of support it. It's just, there's no clear leadership. So I ask for leadership and structure and goals and tactics and follow-up, and you'll get it done. Thank you.
And to go on that, on what Apple has done, what successful companies do.
Can you state your name and your address for Mrs.?
Eric Flom, still, 1 Court.
No, I know who you are still, but Mrs. Kennedy, you know.
Successful athletes, successful businesses, they learn from what others have done. So don't get caught in drowning yourselves and finding the same statistics within our community. There's the statistics that are out there are such great numbers. The probability of us being 1 or 2 standard deviations different still put us in, wow, this is a massive benefit. So you can have a baseline or whatever, just or say to take, as you were suggested, talk to the schools that have done it.
Right.
What were their challenges? Learn from the pros on how they've done it and make those challenges, and don't get caught up in the minutia of just spending and get a framework like Eric suggested. And we're behind you. We thank you. There's a lot of good momentum here, a lot of what seems to be everyone wants this done. And we just want to help in any way that we can to let you achieve those goals and do it for the kids.
Thank you.
And I think everyone's brought up really good points this evening, you know, both the Erics, and I think that's what we were alluding to when we talked about forming a committee of the school committee to take the responsibility to keep moving this forward with diligence. And the reason we're here this evening, I am going to make a blanket statement that I've heard from members of each member, that we don't want to make a vote no tonight. We don't want that vote to be no. But given the scenario that's on the table, we're not comfortable moving forward with that. So what we'd like to do, and I'm not talking about starting over, I'm talking about taking everything we have to date and moving us forward with people who are going to take on that leadership. And the committee has learned a lot from this, I believe. I think we all have. And we would like to continue working on this. We feel it's just extremely valid. We need to keep at it, though. And so I'm going to suggest that we do that and not take a vote in December or now. The vote would be, or the thought would be, to continue.
I would just add one final point. The reason that I would like to see the data from our district, to see what the baseline is for our district, one of the main reasons is that I want to be able to hand that to superintendent candidates and say, this is what our district looks like. How do we address some of these problems? And is Late Start a solution for some of these? Because it's a solution in a lot of other districts. I want to be able to make that happen. So that is why I'm very interested in getting that baseline soon, because we're going to be interviewing superintendent candidates probably within about a month and a half or 2 months. So we have to have that data, because I want, one of the things that I'm going to do in my involvement with the search process is formulate a line of questions about it.
Because my fear was, say, okay, we have 42 tardy kids a day.
Mm-hmm.
So, oh, okay, that's okay. Like, so
Yeah,
what is 42 versus 40 versus 30? Like, it's,
right.
You know, everyone's, it's
right, and it's not
improvement as opposed to the what number. You could open up a can of worms of
right.
what's acceptable on
right.
every one of
and
those.
that's what we got. Angela, you went to a meeting a couple years ago, and most of the Cape Ann League, correct me if I'm wrong, said this isn't a problem in our district.
Right.
To which
kids don't know it's a problem because they don't
right. To which we asked, you know,
yet, and they don't know what the difference is. They're unknown unknowns to the kids.
Right. Right. And you know what's acceptable? Like if the Center for Disease Control and the American Pediatric Association said it's a problem, I'm betting it's a problem in the Cape Ann League. But their take was, what are you talking about? Our kids are fine.
Right.
You know, and I think, tell you the truth, I think we have that in Newburyport too. I mean, look around you, everything's nice here.
So our time is up. I don't know now if we need to reach a consensus to continue. What is the next?
Well, nobody's brought a motion on the table.
But that's
to
what
approve
I'm,
it,
do we
so-
need a motion?
Can we motion to see if anybody really wants to talk who's been here for a couple hours before we close it off? I just don't want to.
What's that?
I just don't want to shut off the time arbitrarily if somebody's been waiting here for a couple hours and has something else to say.
You have one more minute?
Sure.
Yes.
Sure.
Thanks, Eric.
Another Eric?
From 7 Tracy Street.
What is this, the trio of the Erics tonight? I mean, what do you?
We decided to make it easy. It's not luck.
Mrs. Kennedy can just write
Is there
Eric.
anybody in Newburyport not named Derek?
I know.
I started following this somewhat later than some of the other parents and such who were in there. I'm definitely supportive of it, but I guess my only comment is as you work towards this, I want you to not kind of fall into analysis paralysis. And that's sort of what, from the outside, it seems like to me. And the analogy I'll give is, if I'm building a house, I don't need to pick out the color of the kitchen paint and the kitchen doorknobs before I start building the house. So to me, things like we've decided we want to build a house. Here we've decided we need to start school later. My analogy is that the golf team schedule is sort of like the paint on the kitchen, on the kitchen walls. So, a lot of this you need to make the big decision, and then the other smaller decisions are going to fall into place as it moves along.
Thanks, Eric. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
How do we want to proceed?
I think it's,
Parliamentarily wise.
Parliamentarily wise? There's no motion on the table, so I don't think we need to do anything other than continue the work. We've appointed the chairs of the task force. I don't know that there's any parliamentarian movement. Mr. Kroll, do you agree?
It's whatever you want to do, whatever the committee wants to do.
Well, I don't want to break any rules here. I want to make sure that if we need to take a vote to continue and do this, that we do. If we don't and everybody is,
So you're going to close public comment, all right? Close public comment.
well, I don't usually say anything, do I? That brings us to the end of our session of public comment. Thank you for everyone who participated.
I just would like us to identify the next steps. I think that Eric's point was very well taken. That the first thing Bruce mentioned, Mr. Menon, was data. Then reaching out to the other schools. I mean, I think that all of us can take a piece of this. If you identify, we've got 60 schools we want to reach out to, and we want to get copies of the high school schedule. We want to know how they, maybe move some of the teachers along, and so we could come up with a list of questions, and then you could divide that up amongst us and the group to be able to make those calls, so that can at least maybe bring some information back to the school councils, and we should get that done, by the holiday break or something. Maybe, does that seem reasonable for all of us to sort of get a little bit more of that information from this list?
And I think the other thing, for the three of you, I'll say the three, and none of you are an Eric, so that's a good thing. No offense. I think this should be on each agenda for future school committee meetings. I would like to say that for our meeting on the 5th, I believe, that you come back to us with kind of a prototype, what your thoughts are now that the three of you have, met and discussed where we need to go, what kind of leadership we need to provide as a school committee.
Sure.
The data gathering, the fact, I understand that the people in the audience are so involved in this, but I haven't really seen the audience grow. So there's something we're missing in talking to the public. And whether it's getting more of that research to the ground levels, to sending it to teachers, I don't know what that is, but I think that's something you need to think about, and how we're gonna sort of open this up more. We mentioned involving school councils by, having them have presentations. I think we have to broaden the field of interest, I really do.
I
So-
also,
Sorry, no,
I would like, at some level, I don't know if we need to formally propose this, but I want the information not only on what we're finding, but what we're doing to be more visible.
That's what I'm saying, to
Yeah,
open
right.
it up, to
No,
just,
and like visible and permanent, so people know,
Right.
other than the Facebook page,
right.
people know where to go to find out what's going on, what's been decided, what people are thinking.
And you're right, I looked at the Masco page when you mentioned it. It's great.
It's unbelievable.
It's
Well, we can just link to their page.
We should have our own
Yeah,
page.
We just changed the name.
Okay.
But yeah, it's,
Is it too late to say, I just, in the interest of like doing work, a lot of the schools we did reach out to and have a lot of that data that we, in the committees that we did last year with Susan, there were people that were reaching out, just so we don't reinvent the wheel again and be calling from the same.
Do you have that list?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
That
I
would be
think,
great.
part of this is for you three to be in contact.
I have a ton of data.
Right. With, we don't want to replicate work you've already done. What I think we're trying to do is to broaden the field of education for all parents, faculty members. We're going to go into a discussion in a minute about our bus contract, which was another one of the reasons we wound up with a narrow focus. So it's all of those things. And certainly, I know that the committee members will work with the people who have the data to make sure it gets out. End of discussion about that.
Is
We
it-
all set?
Is it possible in 2 weeks, we can come back with some sort of an organized list?
That's what I said, I would like you to come back with
List of
something
asks.
on the 5th,
Yeah,
and then have it be an ongoing agenda item for the future, so that, at least in this forum and on TV, we can talk about the progress that we're making toward the decision. So we will not be voting in December. Thank you. Let's move on for a minute, because this isn't so far off the beaten path of later school start times. We had a finance committee meeting a couple weeks ago. Thank you. And discussed, and as we've discussed here, our bus contract. I don't know, Mr. Cole, if you want to talk about what our conversation, or you want, how would you like to proceed with that?
Well, I think, I think the long and short of it is SALT has really been our only bidder. Right?
We had Ms. Lysick presented us with
Well, there's several,
5 people who were
Yeah.
interested, but only one person sent back a
Right,
bid.
right.
And we've been accused of not going out to
Yeah.
bid it.
no.
So
We
that's,
had-
that's
Yeah,
important.
in the last contract, which was 2015, so that's 2 years ago, we had 6 bidders.
They requested information.
Yeah,
Right,
that
but they
requested
didn't.
information.
Right.
And only one submitted a bid amount, which was Salter. And, what was offered in terms of, the bus routes in Newburyport is that, they're not simple bus routes, they're complicated. Add Plum Island, so, we've had good success with Salter, but again, until we get other bids, we're that's our provider.
But I think, just to talk a little bit more about that, when we talked about buses, we talked about, we're usually in a 3-year contract, and based on some decisions we might make about later school start times, I think we need to have a couple of openers in that contract. I also think that we need to take a look again at our policy of who we bus. I'm talking about the 2-mile limit, what our responsibilities are to the charter schools and the IC, and get a fair assessment of, can we open up the contract the second year or the third year if we decide we want to change later school start times? One of the reasons we didn't do anything, you know, I think a lot of us, I for one, would have loved to have had that extra $500,000 to do later school start times kind of the way we wanted to unfold it, and that wasn't possible. I'm not talking about doing that kind of thing, but I think it's time to take a look at our buses and the requirements. And Susan, I don't know if you, what is our responsibility to both the charter school and IC? Do we have a responsibility state?
We do. We do.
Yes.
By state law?
We do.
State law. It's
Yes.
not policy, it's state law.
Okay.
Even to parochial schools?
Yes, we do.
Yes.
We have an obligation.
Although the charter school has to be different because we're not obligated to bus them, like from Amesbury, for example.
No.
No.
Outside of 2 miles.
We're
there has to be-
obligated to.
Newburyport students.
Newburyport students, the same, it doesn't matter.
Oh, okay, right,
Same
right.
applies to IC,
So
it's
if
only
they-
the Newburyport students.
If they live within the zip code, got it.
And what about the 2-mile limit?
I mean, that is policy, and that's what we have in our policy. That certainly can be reviewed, but that has, I think, consistently worked for us, the policy that we currently have in place.
Which, remind me what it is?
You had to ask me that. I wish I had thought to have it, because I
I'm
don't want to be misquoted.
No, and I don't want you to be.
I would rather send that to people tomorrow,
Yeah.
because I don't want to get it wrong.
Well, I know that, you know, you think about the community, and from what I understand, we control the busing schedule, and how do we fit the IC and the charter into our schedule, and if we changed, what would happen with those schools?
They fit into our schedule, is the way that it works. And the charter school, when they have had days where we might have, or they might choose to do professional development, they have actually chartered their own buses for on some days.
Okay.
So they have made it work for them. I know that Andy Williamson was very interested in the later start times, because that definitely, he likes, they like their schedule the way it is right now, and if we were to go later and that would impact their schedule, obviously that's concerning to them. So both the IC and the charter school need to very much be a part of this conversation as well, just so that they can do their own planning in terms of their schedules.
Are you talking about later school stuff? I'm
Yes.
sorry, guys.
Yes.
Later school start
Yes,
times
'cause
as
that-
well, so.
Yep, that will
Mr. Menon, I'm just gonna remind you to think about the IC and
We
the
just need
charter
to keep
school
them in the
and
loop.
your, in your thought process. Sean, did you have a question?
I just had a question, and this might be just too in detail, I guess, data, but do we look at how many bus students we have, and then out of that group, how far away each of those students are? Like, we have so many students that are right at that 2-mile mark, or the 3-mile mark, or we have
that data. And what happens, and something that I want to explain, is that, so if we have a situation, the first week of school, and it looks like, bus 11 is a little bit overcrowded, we've gone back, and like Nancy and I will speak with Lee at Salter, and we'll say to her, this bus is a little bit overcrowded. She will actually, at that point, redo the routes and move bus stops so that we're balancing out the buses. And they've been very accommodating that way. So that's one of the pros in working with Salter, has been that they really have, they respond very quickly. And because they're local, that's one of the advantages. That's not to say that you're not going to get the same kind of response, but all of the, the work that they did in terms of running different scenarios for later start times and coming to meetings, they never charged us for that, and that was completely outside of the contract that we have with them. So that was all gratis, the work that they did when they came and they presented and spoke to us and ran different schedules and different scenarios. And They have been, it's very easy when you're creating a contract to actually be part of the contract that, if in fact there is going to be a change to the schedule, that, that you make that be part of the contract, so that's actually part of it, so that the expectation is already set for that.
I guess that's part of the reason we're having this discussion, so that is part of the scenario,
exactly,
and we want to make sure. And I guess, my question about the 2 mile was, I thought it was our policy to bus within that 2 miles so that we get the maximum number of students to school as possible.
Yeah.
Did you pull it up, Nick?
Yep.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
The Newburyport School Committee, so basically, by law, we are required to bus all children, grades kindergarten through grade 6, who reside more than 2 miles from the school they attend.
Okay, so 6 is 2 miles, okay.
Okay? That's what we're required to do by law. Anybody that's beyond 2 miles away from the Bresnahan School or the Mullen School.
Or the Knock. Grade 6.
No, it says 6.
Sixth
Oh,
grade.
6.
Sixth grade.
K or pre-K?
It says K, because pre-K is it's not a...
They don't bus pre-K, right? We only bus
No,
K.
I think they drop
I don't
off.
think we do.
They drop off.
They drop off, yeah.
So, now, we also
So,
say
wait,
that...
can you just read that one more time? We aren't required.
We are
We are required.
to bus all children in grades kindergarten through grade 6 who live more than 2 miles
That's the key. Okay,
from the thing.
the
Okay?
piece. Got it.
Now, in addition, we are required to bus special education students and students requiring accommodations under Section 504.
Correct.
Okay? And then we also have the ability to provide busing on a fee basis. Okay? And that is where we consider all non-eligible students. Non-eligible students would be students that are in grades K through 6 that reside within 2 miles of the school, plus all students grades 7 through 12. And those are all per fee students.
So we don't charge K through 6 students who live more than 2 miles from the school?
That's correct.
I want to reiterate all of this so that when we really talk about this bus contract, that we understand what we're doing. And okay, I'm sorry, keep going.
No, that's basically it. School choice students are ineligible for transportation service. And we will establish the level of service and fees during the course of its budget deliberations each year.
Where do we define the fees? Because I think in last year's budget, we were realizing how much subsidy the district puts in for.
Yeah, that's where we do it.
No,
we do it at the time of the discussions on budget. We have a portion of at least one meeting that is dedicated specifically to transportation, just the way we do have another one dedicated to athletic fees and whatnot. And I think this year, as it's been, I think it was voted that we don't move it, the fee level seemed to be working. That
How many students, high school students, does one bus take? I mean, I know there's more little kids on the buses than high school kids.
Yes.
Did you finish, though? You didn't talk about high school kids yet.
Sorry.
Yes, I did.
What did you say?
I said high school kids, I said kids 7 through 12, which includes high school kids, are eligible to have busing on a per fee basis, regardless of where they live in the city.
50. All right, so we have 214 high school students who currently are taking the high school bus. I understand. I don't know how many of those are, well, it doesn't matter because they're outside the 2 mile.
There are 5 high school buses.
There's 5
high school buses, yeah, plus their I don't know if there's 1 or 2 special education buses as well at the high school.
So even if we tried to do something like one day a month, let the kids sleep in at high school, we're still talking about a tremendous amount of money to be able to shift this, to let that happen.
Is there anything else in that policy we need to, hold on one second. Okay.
It's very
Mr.
short and
Menon?
sweet. I'm sorry if I don't remember this, but have we asked Salter to model what the buses would look like if we went to 990 at the middle school? Have we asked them?
No, we did not. No.
I'm sorry for being so single-minded here, but
No.
but I would like that model because it seems to me like the potential is there to change some things. Some things might shift.
And they said that was an obstacle.
They said it would be easier if we went to 990.
Well, easier, and whether that changes the number of buses, or that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Right.
I mean, it would be great if it changes the number of buses because.
So that instead of paying for $700,000 worth of buses to do it right, we'll pay for.
Susan and I spoke to
Well,
her.
we might have the money then to do a later start.
Yeah.
Susan and I spoke to her, Lee, once about changing the number of buses. And, I mean, everybody's always said, well, that bus was all empty. There was nobody on that bus. And, you know, Lee's big point was people pay for the reservation of a seat in case, you know, like my kids, I pay for the bus, my kids never take the bus home. They just don't do it because they're an after-school program, so they never take the bus home. But so my kid's seat is always empty on the bus, but I pay for the right to put them on it if I want it, if I want to. So that's why the buses always look empty to people. And then we talked about combining the high school and the middle school buses, and that wouldn't there was no way we could figure out at the time to cut the number of buses.
And part of that was the time needed in between runs during the day. So
Right.
it wasn't just the start or the stop, but they need a 45-minute in between so that they can
Get back to their starting point.
get the kids off and then start picking them up again.
So the reason why the 990 becomes a little bit easier is because it pushes the knock back from whichever school is starting earlier.
Correct.
So you right now, because the knock ends earlier, it makes that differential.
And if you
tougher to
recall,
hit.
David, one of the things that she talked about is that if the times were the same between Knock and the high school, she could send, you know, you could do half the buses to Knock and half the buses to the high school,
Right.
and then have
Flip.
the
Right.
switch. And that's, you know, that's just one way that a lot of districts do that.
Yeah.
But we
And I
didn't.
still would love us to take a look at, we started down this path and we didn't go very far, but the fact that we have a public transportation system it's very limited in Newburyport, and why can't we try to change the bus times and the bus schedules to accommodate picking up high school kids, you know, in the mornings and afternoons? That could help offset some of the issues here.
Let's go to Plymouth.
I think one time. But maybe that's where maybe that's where our bus goes, and the other one does the loop.
Several spots in the downtown
Yeah.
area or something.
What does taking the next step in that look like?
It comes off our cherry sheet, so it's our contract with the RTA. So we just need to sit down and have a conversation with them about that.
I think
And they were
that's-
willing to have the conversation. We just ran into some concerns. I don't want to speak for Mr. Cole when he's not here, but he was saying that the minute a student hits the bus, it becomes our responsibility.
That's right.
And that's too dangerous for us to put people on the RTA bus. But I disagree, because I think they have cameras and phones, and, you know, we're talking about a bus that's going to pick somebody up in Newburyport and drop them at the high school.
Well, especially at the high school level, we're not required to give them transportation.
Correct.
For example, Malden we just got rid of all of our buses. So all my kids, K-8, are on city buses, except the special ed kids. So there's got to be a model out there for keeping an eye on that.
I just think it's worth looking at.
Oh, absolutely.
But that's
No.
why we're having this discussion now, so that we can, you know, give this feedback to Susan and Nancy when they go about, you know, the bus contract for this coming year.
It would be great if we could save that kind of money with cutting buses and then turn
Well-
around and do the bus and put the money back in to
But the
start
other-
school later.
But the other point, though, Donna, is I wonder if we as a committee need to talk about late buses, because for some reason this year, there's a late bus for the Knox students, but the Mullen kids can't get on it. So that's kind of,
That's simply, that is, if we want the Mullen kids to get on it, that is a phone call. I have not had that request from anybody this year.
Except me.
yeah, David.
You asked about it. You
Can I
asked
officially
about it.
request it again then?
No.
Then I'll request it if you
Okay.
can't.
I just say, she said, you know, it's funny, I was just thinking about that today, because she sent out the same memo about art club. And I'm thinking, okay, how do I get Declan home from art club? Can he get on the late bus? It literally just came out today.
Yeah, the late bus doesn't run every day.
It's okay, it just has to run Mondays.
I actually.
Just for you, no,
Let me
I'm
find
talking
that out for you,
about,
David.
I'm just talking about
Yeah.
what
See?
is the availability for that campus to have a late bus, that's all. That
They have
whoever's
one.
there can get on it, whether they're a Mullen student or not. I
They have
don't
one.
know,
Yeah,
Angela?
the reason we have a late bus is because of the charter school bus schedule. So that's the charter school bus that's picking up later because they have a later dismissal. And so they pick up at the charter and they swing by the middle school to get any students who want to hop on that late bus. So that's an advantage right now that we have with transporting the charter, because we just piggyback on their bus that leaves later than what our schools dismiss. And so the reason not many Mullen students have participated is because Mullen dismisses later, so that bus comes, Mullen dismisses later, and I think that bus is there by 3:15 or something. So it's a shorter period of time. A Mullen student could stay for a shorter period of time after school, where a middle school student could get a whole hour after school.
So I'm just saying maybe that's something we look at and see if, you know, whether it's the charter or the IC or whatever. And, you know, if we're, I guess, I'm not being selfish, but if we're controlling the bus contract, we should have it to our advantage, I think. And you know, if some of these Mullen kids, whether it's after-school programs or tutorials or whatever, it'd just be nice to know that they can get home safely if they're staying after school. That was my only point in that. And I don't, thank you for that information. I didn't realize that it was a charter school bus, but, you know, and again, what is the ridership of that in any given day? You're saying it doesn't happen every day. I'm just saying these are some of the things that we should be at least thinking about in this new bus contract, that's all. Go ahead.
And if I could just add another
Sure.
thing, I mean, I think there's a larger transportation conversation that if you're, you know, really talking about a bus contract and some of the transportation issues, we have some significant transportation issues for students, particularly our students who whose family don't have transportation themselves or are working parents, because that is the only late bus. We have some students who are unable to participate in after-school events because there's no transportation. We have some students who aren't able to participate in special events that we might run during school vacations or things because there's no transportation. And it's usually our students who oftentimes would really benefit from those programs, but because we can't get them home safely, they don't participate.
So you may be saving money on the one hand, but we may have to put it somewhere else.
But having a, you know, working with the,
RTA.
that might solve some of that problem too.
Right. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I'm not missing anything on our to-do list. We're going to get a model from Salter of what it would look like if the middle school went to 990, and we're going to have a conversation with the RTA, and that's going to happen soon. Both of those things will happen soon, right?
Well, the RTA was willing to work with us last time. We just,
Okay.
you know, we were having so many busing
But
issues. at
somebody
one point,
needs
but-
to look at the legality of that, as Mr. Cole mentioned to us before. It's our responsibility for those students. Is it our responsibility once they get on that
Well, didn't you just said you eliminated all the
outside?
buses?
But I'm
Yeah.
just asking that just to make sure we're safe, and because you
So-
mentioned that you know, legally are we bound to protect those kids on those city buses? Where does our responsibility end?
I wouldn't think, because we're not responsible to get high school kids to the bus, it would be like kids getting in their friend's car. That's not on
Right.
us. That's just
Yeah,
how the
it's-
kids are choosing to get to school.
It's generally if they're on buses that the school is, that are basically employed by the school district. Yeah.
Right. That-
Right, they're our
absolutely.
responsibility.
Right, so the city bus would not be,
Our
I mean, that's the city's responsibility, but.
Well, the RTA's
Yeah,
responsibility. But no,
Just pass that buck around the table.
no, but I'm sure
Well, no,
it's
that's-
fine.
But that's-
No, absolutely.
I'm sure it's fine, it's.
And do we know how many children we bus inside the 2-mile limit?
I can get that.
I know that as
We
a
have that
school
data.
committee, we said, I don't, you know, like, there's a housing component in our town, and at that time, when we talked about busing those students, even though they're in the 2-mile, I remember the conversation about this committee thinking the most important thing is just how do we get the most kids to school? So I don't know if it's time to look at that again or not, and how many children that would put at risk, but that's another piece of something I would like to see, just for informational purposes, so we know what we're dealing with when we go into this new contract, that's all, and we make it clear to you, Susan, and, you know, Steve, the chair of the finance committee, so. Is there anything else anybody wants that we didn't talk about with busing? Okay. And we don't have to bus high school kids, but we are.
For a fee.
For a fee.
But the fee doesn't cover the cost of the
No, it
bus.
doesn't
We-
come close.
It doesn't come anywhere
No.
near it.
No.
So,
So I think we need to really look at that.
Could we reduce the fee for kids as they get older, like on a graduated? I mean, could we reduce the subsidy, sorry?
we would have to pick that up, though.
We could. We can do anything we want with that, Dave.
That's what I'm saying, if a family wanted to bus a high school kid, they get less of a subsidy than if they wanted to bus a 3rd grade kid, for example.
So you're talking about a different fee structure.
Right,
A
different fees-
graduated fee.
graduated fee structure that reduces the subsidy as the kids become, in theory, more capable of getting themselves to school.
That's theory.
But then they would still buy if you were charged less at the high school?
We were charged, the families would be charged more to
Oh, I
bus a
gotcha.
high school student than they would a 3rd grader.
Because we're not required.
So.
Right.
So
Because you
you
can't
encourage
put
them
as many
to
high
walk,
school kids
bike.
on the
Encourage
bus.
them to walk, bike, get a ride with a friend, take
But that's,
the city bus.
right, see,
Public
it's all these things,
transportation.
so I think
Yeah.
there are some ways that we may be able, perhaps to reduce our costs that we haven't looked at
Like
as
13
in
buses, is that
depth.
what we are, Susan?
Yeah, 13.
Okay.
Is there anything else?
Be a good conversation.
So, Mr. Cole, could I ask you to keep up on that as the chair of finance?
Sure.
that- Because when do we start looking at the bus contract, Susan? March?
Yeah, probably in March.
So, you know, maybe before anything's cast in concrete, it comes back and we talk about making sure that we're there. All right, anything else? Is that it? Okay, next up on our agenda, superintendent's report for the high school principal search update.
Skipping policy?
I'm
Policy,
sorry.
Second reading.
Sorry, Mr.
Looks like we're voting on this tonight.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve, no, go ahead. Short and sweet.
Very short, very short. At our last meeting, the only policy we did not approve was the community school facilities one, because people wanted to see the text corrected to exclude Sundays, and also that we should be more proactive about saying that we would invite and encourage the use of our facilities. So those are the changes that have been made. I circulated a red-lined version for everybody so you can see the changes. Everybody seemed to be okay with it. Mr. Hawkeiser had one additional comment or suggestion. Dave, if you want to touch on that.
Yeah, I just have to pull it up, unless you remember it right off the top of your head. Otherwise, I have it right here.
It was something about having the superintendent having final say.
Oh, you said that we wouldn't discriminate against anybody for, race, religion, political origin. And I'm thinking, well, maybe we would. That, white supremacy group wants to come and
Use
rent
the
the
gym, yeah.
auditorium for a fundraiser, and we're gonna say no based on your political views.
Well, we might say no based on security. More likely than based on.
That's all, I was just thinking about that, like,
We do say that superintendent has final authority.
Okay, that's fine then.
Yeah, that probably could.
So,
Okay.
I don't know if we want
Maybe
to
I
get
just
into
missed it then, as long as we have some caveat that says,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, 67.
sorry, then I just
had,
missed it.
Just a question of clarification, if I could ask it.
Yes, Mr. Manick?
Nick, under community use of school facilities, file, section F, file FG.
Yep.
Could you just explain to me item number 2, I mean, I think I have an understanding of what that is, but I want to make sure I understand it. The use of school facility will not be granted to any
To any
person.
person or persons for individual gain, whether financial or other. In other words,
I want to hold a political event.
yeah, or
Oh, there was a political event.
do we want, we wouldn't, certainly,
Was it for financial gain?
I think we'd have to take a look at somebody that wanted to give a big
There was no money.
Okay.
motivational conference and it's all for profit.
Mhm.
You know, something of that
The
nature.
reason I'm asking is the question that I'm always asking. I really want to encourage the use of our auditoriums for all kinds of events, but some of those events are put on, concerts are put on by somebody who's making money. They're paying a fee to us and they're making money. This doesn't prohibit that from happening.
They would be in the classification of, they have the various classifications in there.
I mean, they're not a nonprofit. They're a for-profit, but
I'm sorry.
Let's move it to the page that has all the classifications on it. Hold on. Yeah, Group 5, individuals, Newburyport organizations and groups, and all for-profit individuals or organizations.
so that's permissible.
Yep.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that I understood that that wasn't proscribing anything.
Listed as Group 5 there.
Great.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Policy carries unanimously.
And be prepared for next big batch coming up.
That's not tonight.
No.
I didn't
Just
ask
said be
you,
prepared. Good warning.
this is backwards, but I asked you a question about banners and who's responsible and who puts those up.
We haven't had a chance to take a look at that.
All right, okay. I didn't know if that was in
You did
here.
ask me that question.
No, I didn't know if it got lost or,
No, it doesn't belong here in this
Great.
particular aspect of it.
no problem.
We have a whole list, we're developing a whole list of policies that need a home and policies that are missing as we go through this. And that's what we'll be able
Sure.
to take that up. We just want to make sure we finish off the basic work first and then go back to everything else.
You're doing a yeoman's job. Your
By
committee
the
should
end of
be
this year,
commended.
Ms. Sweeney, you will be able to vote on the last of the policy review.
And I
Before
will be
you
able
go.
to give every principal and administrator a copy of the same policy book that the school committee has, so that you're all operating on the same playing field.
And if they have any questions, there's your guru.
I'm known as somebody who will crack the whip, so long as I feed them first, right?
Right. Feed them and they will come. Now can we move on to
Yes.
item number 9, superintendent's report on the high school principal search.
I am going to pass out the schedule that has been developed. We have posted the position. As of today, there were 19 applicants on there. The request for teachers, parents, students, and administrators to be on the committee closed on Friday. I have way more people who have requested to be on the committee than I can possibly use on the actual search committee itself. So I'll be making decisions on the committee's composition by Wednesday, and we'll be notifying people. And folks that are not placed on the committee will have an opportunity to participate in focus groups moving forward. But this is the schedule. It's a pretty aggressive one. I will tell you that the committee is going to meet for the first time on December 5th. So some of the dates after that are subject to change if in fact some of them don't work out for committee members. But this was handed out to, it was put on the website. It was sent out to parents in the middle school and the high school. I have I've been given recommendations for students to place on the committee, and it went out to all of the staff at both, at the high school as well. So
What's your target number of participants?
probably around 12.
Are you working with a consulting firm on this or doing it
No,
in-house?
we're not. We're doing it in-house. This will be the 5th high school principal that I've hired.
Good, you must be good at it, so.
I have
Get
a
it right,
question about the
Mr. Menon?
schedule.
If you've done something.
I have a question about the schedule.
Yeah.
My main experience has been superintendent searches, but you have the committee interviewing, selecting finalists, and then you're doing focus groups?
Yeah, because we want the finalists to be part of the focus groups. So, in other words, we'll move the finalists, and there's no necessarily any set. My request to the committee, I'm not going to participate. I will be in the actual interviews, but I'm not going to ask any questions. Those are going to be generated from the committee. And my ask of the committee is that they make recommendations to me of 3 finalists. And then those 3 finalists actually go through. It was the same process that we used when we hired the middle school principal as well.
So the focus groups are really more like a public interview of
Yes.
sorts?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's not, these are the qualifications we want after you've already selected the
No.
finalists? Okay.
As I said, this is subject to change, but the dates are subject to change, but I did want you to have and to know what the plan was.
Hoping we don't have crossover
In terms of?
committees.
Well, we are. I mean, what, not, I think, if I recall correctly, there was only one person that was interested in both committees. And it won't be a problem for us.
Thank you.
Any questions, comments, thoughts? All right, let's see. Assistant Superintendent's Report. Before you begin, Angela, I just want to say, 2 weeks ago, I think you sent out that the offerings of the workshop, and I think, you got a lot of positive feedback from all of us that, the ingenuity in the workshops themselves. And then I really appreciated this week receiving all of the Google Docs about all of the presentations. So for me, and I'm hoping people feel the same way, that was really helpful to me. And so what I'd like to hear in your report, what are the next steps? What are your expectations of the workshop offerings? Because, there were some on, a lot of them on mindfulness, there were some on, laws. So what's the follow-through to that workshop?
Well, the theme of the day, as I told you before, was safe and supportive schools.
Right.
So the objective of the day was really to build our capacity in that way. So from many different angles, we did everything from literally keeping our buildings safe, understanding what the law is. We had, presentations from DCF who came and talked about the process of having to make a referral all the way through foster care. A dynamic presentation. We had a surprise presenter with that workshop that we hadn't anticipated, but a woman who is a regional director for DCF now happened to be a graduate of the Newburyport Public Schools and who was also a foster child when she went through the Newburyport Public Schools. And she came to that day's presentation, and she was the last to speak in those workshops. And I just wish everybody could have been there. It was such a testimony to the Newburyport Public Schools. She credited the Newburyport Public Schools for every bit of her success in her life. That, they taught her how to build relationships, that she learned that she had something to offer, she learned that she was smart. I mean, it was It was really incredible, and some of the teachers that she had are still in district and happened to be in the workshop. Really, really moving. I had people stopping me in the halls saying, "Have you heard the presentation? Yeah, have you heard?" So I think, that's really the objective, and it's moments like that that are so moving that somebody comes back years later. This woman graduated in 1987. And so, her children are entering college now, and she was just very powerful for our educators to hear the impact that they have on one's life on a regular basis. So I think that was good. We got a lot of positive feedback about the workshops all day long, and I do think that our staff internalizes the information that they get, and it's all about the application of that information. But people have also already started to reference that. In emails, I've had many requests to sit and talk with different professional learning communities that are doing work, were inspired by the day, have new ideas, want to, take it to the next step.
We had a meeting this morning.
We had a meeting this morning like that.
We looked at the staff.
Well, one of the things that I didn't tell you about in the information I sent you that I did want you to know is, as you saw, that we showed a video of Sean Aker at the National Conference for Behavioral Health in the afternoon. And Sean Aker is the author of The Happiness Advantage. Some of you may have read that, plus several other books. He's a dynamic speaker, very fun to watch. Matter of fact, we tried to contact him to bring him because he's out of Harvard. And $50,000 later, we said, we could watch the YouTube video. And he just did the conference. But we showed the video, and then teachers worked in smaller groups afterwards with some reflective questions around how do we have an impact on what we do every day through our attitudes, through the attitude that we choose at any time, and how do we build positive behaviors for ourselves and for our students to build a more positive culture. And I think those were very rich conversations. And then afterwards, we put forward a challenge, because Sean Aker's, one of the things Sean Aker says is it takes 21 days to build a new habit. That's all.
We just
21 days.
28 repetitions for 21 days. No, I'm
21 days to build a new habit. So we put out a challenge that people would recognize 3 things they're grateful for to just change your mindset in a positive direction. And you put together, a hashtag ClipperThanks21 and put that out and challenge people to go ahead and post it on any social media that they're a part of, what their gratitudes are, the things that they're happy about in their life. So, there's a Facebook page that's Nice People of Newburyport.
Yes.
We put that out to Nice People of Newburyport, and people, Jackie Russo has been posting there for the school district every day in that time. We're in day 13 right now, so I challenge any of you to do the same. But it's really nice, and we've seen quite a few posts from our school community, and people started to post right away. So it was a nice way to kind of culminate our day thinking about how do we build the most positive culture we can, and isn't that the strongest foundation for safe and supportive schools that there could ever be. So it was, I think it was a nice ending to the day. We had community organizations that made some nice self-care donations, under the limit that kept it all within the ethics law and everything, but some organizations that offered some exercise time at health clubs, and I purchased some things for the staff, simple things like yoga mats and water bottles and those kind of things, and we raffled them at the end of the day just to kind of remind people to take care of yourself. And
just dovetailed nicely with the presentation we had earlier about positive impact in behavior in the class as well. It's all
model.
Connected, yes.
It is. And you know, this was the first time we tried that kind of conference-style day where we had no schedule, and I have to tell you, I was a little panicked the morning up. I kept thinking, oh gosh, you know, if this doesn't work, we're gonna be in a mess. And it worked beautifully. Wouldn't you say, Marie? I mean, people really just, you know, looked at their catalogs, decided what they wanted to see. If a session was full, they just went on to the next one. And so I'm very encouraged by that, because I think we got a lot of positive feedback about that too. And it's nice anytime that you can offer more choice. It's a good thing.
It's true. Thank you.
You're
That
welcome.
sounds great. Subcommittee reports, I know that FinCom met. Mr. Paul?
Yeah, we went over several things. Nancy Lysick handed out a DESE document on per pupil, per student expenditures, which our average costs for students calculated according to DESE, various non-instructional, instructional spending criteria, and basically our students range from, this is average per student, from the Bresnahan School at $15,816, Mullen School $13,887, Knock Middle School $14,470, and Newburyport High School $14,907. And our average, according to the state, I think was slightly below what the state average is and what our expenditures are. Again, that, I know, we've probably seen this material before. I don't know how you Superintendent, I don't know how useful you find this, but.
That's actually a new report.
New report, okay,
That's a
thank
new
you.
report that the state, the state's putting out a lot of information. It's like, it's a little mind-boggling. There's so much that's on the DESE website now. You have to plow through it. But Nancy had found this report and wanted to bring it to the Finance Committee just so that we could look and compare.
Yeah.
Generally, you spend more money on your high school kids than you do on younger students typically, just because that's just the way that it works.
But it was nice to see where we were, because we actually pulled out the whole state. Remember,
Right,
she came
right.
back, so we just kind of looked at other communities, and
Right. So we're average about 15,300, whereas, for instance, Hamilton Wenham, 16,785, Manchester Essex, 16,326, Amesbury, 14,580, Winchester, 13,3,
surprising.
Georgetown around 13,000, Haverhill 12,600. So we took a look at a number of them, and I'll throw Weston in because I like to, 23,898.
Imagine.
So, we also just took a look at the expense report for the year to date, and we've got a little bit of in special ed tuition, but I believe we have ways to counteract that deficit right now through other services, so we're not too bad off. There's nothing here that's not budgeted, is I guess what I'm getting at. We did recommend some transfers central-wide. There was a transfer of $1,500 from in-service to software. For the high school, there was a transfer of $4,600 from accreditation to memberships, $1,200 from library equipment to software, $500 from world languages to world language supplies, $1,000 for summer work to school administration, $4,000 from summer work to school administration, $600 from summer work to English texts, $3,000 from athletic transportation to cost of officials, and then $700 in transportation bus costs for, sounds like a cross-country meet. And those were all approved 3-0, for a grand total of $17,100. And then, as mentioned before, we did talk about a budget process, not the budget process, we talked about the bus contract. As we mentioned earlier, we did also talk about the budget process coming up, where we thought it would be important to talk about, for instance, that it be a reflection of a dialogue that we're having, that the school councils have with us, to show linkage between the school council plans and what we want to, what we want to pursue as priorities for the next budget cycle. Expanding world languages, expanding student supports, the importance of safe and supportive schools, helping kids who are not making progress, and that's pretty much it. Yeah, we finished with the bus contract.
We did a little bit, just to continue.
Please.
We did talk a little bit about our presentation on the 28th, the joint meeting, and talked about the importance of, Nancy keeps talking about next year, I believe, is the cliff. And then I did get a question that I said I would ask for Mr. Hawkeiser. What is that cliff? What are we losing that we rely heavily on? And if you can't answer
I
it.
can answer.
Okay.
The choice money. Choice money goes away. That's really, and that's what we've been working towards.
You said that
That's
you
the
wondered
biggest
if
one.
there was
That's the
something
one I
else.
Weren't there other things? I was pretty positive that Nancy had like a shorter or not so short list of
There are a few grant programs.
grant
that have
programs.
There are
been-
grant programs that have
Yeah.
gone away as well,
Mhm.
so that's impacted us. So, but choice is the big nut.
And what is that number?
Well, we're going from, 900,000 down to like 450, and then it's gone.
It's gone after the year after that. So those are some of the things that we were questioning whether or not the city council is really aware of that and how much that's going to impact our budget.
Yeah, we talked about it
Because
during the
that's
last budget cycle.
significant.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, for this year, we carried over 658,000, and of that, 641,000 was budgeted, so,
yeah,
it comes in handy, obviously.
right. So the point was, right now we're doing okay, but there is going to be a significant change in our revenue source, so, which is a good thing. Joint Ed did not meet between last meeting and this meeting. Curriculum instruction and expectations.
It's Monday.
Monday. Policy, we know, Matt, they meet every time. So I guess the last thing is to remind you all, and I think we all got an email today from Lois Honiger asking us if we were going to be in attendance on the 28th. As you know from past, some of you know from past, there's a dinner involved with that that's put on by Chartwell's a half hour, an hour before the meeting, or whatever.
6 o'clock.
And it's kind of a nice time to just sit and chat with the school, the city councilors before we begin the meeting, so.
The city
So-
picks up that cost, so please, please, we had a lot of people not
BYOB,
show last
right.
year, and we paid for everyone to be here. So I just would like not to have to spend extra money for dinner if you are not going to be here, please.
I told her I'm making the meeting. I don't think I can make that.
Okay.
We'll see.
All right.
Well, just as long
Yeah.
as you let someone know
I
that,
did.
that's
I let her
fine.
know.
Thank
That's
you,
fine.
appreciate it.
Okay, anything else? Mr. Decanter?
I just want to, since we didn't have our high school representative today, I think I'd like to give a shout out to Sam Aquaviva.
Oh, yeah. Well done, Sam.
Number one,
He's all over the news.
I missed that, what was that?
Sam Aquaviva, number one in cross-country, his division.
It's great.
Division 2.
Along those lines, I saw the Lord of the Flies at the Knock this weekend. Off the charts. I mean, the set alone, and I think like the acting chops of some of our kids, it's pretty.
They're pretty amazing.
And as a literature teacher, the fact that they pulled off Lord of the Flies with girls on there,
I know, that's,
it was good, really good.
can I hear a motion, please?
Motion to
Motion
adjourn.
to adjourn.
Oh, can I just say one more thing?
Yes.
At the Thanksgiving football game, at halftime,
We had last year Show Your Sport. We did that fundraiser here where we identified 3 coaches. So this is the first one where the tree and the plaque is going to be unveiled at halftime for Coach Gaudiano. So I just thought you'd like to know that. And I guess he's going to be a little bit late, but he'll be there for halftime with his family for that recognition. So if you are around and want to join me where the tree and the plaque is at halftime,
I'll be there.
Where are the tree and the plaque going to be?
I know. That's a big question.
Mayor? Where are the tree and the plaque going to be? Oh.
I'm sure we'll find it.
Follow her, she's.
I'll look for you.
I'm sure we'll find it.
I'll look for you at halftime.
I don't know where it was actually set, but I believe it's not far from.
Like she said, follow me.
It's, I think it's near where the original entrance is to the field.
The Gaudiano tree.
I would
Motion
like
to
to
adjourn.
think about whether or not
One
we
moment,
really
please,
want to
we're
meet
not
on the
adjourned.
18th.
I'm not back until the 5th.
Oh, oh,
I've actually
oh,
missed the
oh.
next school committee meeting. I would love to meet.
We're not, mayor's,
I'm just curious
Bringing
if people
something.
would think we need to meet on the 17th or 18th, whatever that meeting is.
the 18th
A
of
motion to
December.
fall in line with Donna's disinterested meeting. 18.
Does anybody have a problem with that?
No, I love
I
it.
just don't see
So
where
do we need to take a vote, or are we
I-
just okay?
I will just say that.
Yeah, you're not there anyway.
No, I'll be there for the
Oh.
18th. Or I won't be there for the 18th if we don't have it.
Well,
But I may
no.
show up anyway. But,
you can
but
show up.
you know, there's lots to discuss, and I'm always in favor of discussing. That having been said, I understand I'm not voted, and make other plans.
I don't think we voted, but do we need to cancel a
We can
meeting?
decide at the next meeting.
So just think about that, and if you could let us know, Susan, if you think we have hefty agenda items for that day, then we should meet, but
2 sections of policy. 2 new ones for first reading.
Wait a minute, we're not adjourned yet. Could I hear a motion?
Second.
He's got the motion, I need a second.
A second.
I'll second it.
Discussion? All those in favor? Since half of the people walking out of the room, thanks for coming.
Cheers.
I still think they're better than the ones I used to make it.